Welcome to the fifth Sayonara Punk Podcast, and thank you for everybody that's showing up to give us a watch. We are live, and so if we do encounter any technical difficulties, please bear with us. It's not as easy as we make it look. And today we're going to be talking with a good friend and colleague of mine, Cameron Ward.
Good friend is right. Hey, Curtis.
And we're just going to be shooting the shit about movies, directors, the masters of cinema, light stuff. So
Yeah.
with that said, let's get into it. So I always like to start out by asking, what's your earliest memory of cinema? Like from the youngest, the first memory ever etched into your brain, because I feel like we're the first generation to grow up with this weird psychedelic media that's imprinted on our brains from such a young age. Like never before in the history of the world have you're showing all these flashing images and music and weird stuff to little kids right when they're a baby. So it's always interesting to me what you remember.
Very, right? Very interesting question. Cause yeah, you're right. I mean, like I grew up. Okay, go early. Earliest would have to be. There was a book that my daddy had, and I don't know. It was somewhere in the house. I found it. I'm sure it was something that he was trying to keep away from me because it was like a monster book. It had the very old monsters, the Wolfman, um, various vampires, Christopher Lee as Dracula, Bela Lugosi as Dracula, and then the Nosferatu dude. I just remember, and of course, the Lady Frankenstein himself. Anyway, it was just like a collection of all those books, or I'm sorry, of images from all those movies. And
Yeah.
that was the first stuff that I ran into.
So was it like a cinema? It was a cinema book that
I
was
think
just
so, yeah.
like Monsters of Cinema.
Monster. Well, I think it. If I remember it right, I don't even know if he still has it anymore. If I remember it right, it was a book about whatever character that was. Let's say it was Frankenstein and its lore and how it was related to cinema at the time. Something like that.
Yeah, but that's definitely something that would stick out in your head as a little kid, especially you run across it and you open it up, you're like, oh my God, what,
For
what is
sure.
what is this?
For sure. And I mean, I remember being scared to death of it. I remember, and from there we can get into a whole bunch of stuff because I'm sure, Curtis, you're around the same age as I am. You ran into a lot of the same images. Freddy Krueger was
Yeah.
one as well, and that was early too. Like my sister was older than us, so she was able to watch it, and we watched it with her from like behind the couch. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
scared to death.
Yeah, we had a babysitter at one point when our parents went out of town, and she was like, "We're gonna watch all the Friday the 13th this weekend." And
Yeah.
so she just rented like 10 movies, and we just binge watched all of them. But old school VHS, of course,
Of course.
back in the day. And that was my first like real horror run. I feel like
Oh,
was all of those. I was a big Jason fan, but I was a huge Freddy fan too.
of
Like,
course.
I think we
Yeah.
all were, right, when we were kids.
Yeah.
It's Jason, Freddy. Is there anyone else in that mix we're forgetting?
Oh, Mike Myers,
Jason,
Halloween.
Mike Myers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
John Carpenter gave us a gem there. That thing is still giving. They're releasing a movie. The guys, what's the guy from South Carolina? I can't think. He was in the HBO show about the baseball player. Oh, Eastbound and Down, Danny McBride. So those cats have picked up the Halloween thing. That was after
oh, Danny McBride owns the property now?
well, Danny McBride, Jody Hill, and what's the guy's the other director that works with Jody Hill, and he did George Washington. I can't think of his name now. Sorry, I'm blanking. But like they all met in North Carolina at the School of the Arts there, came out here, and they made Eastbound and Down, and from there it was all the stuff up to and including Righteous Gemstones. So I know those guys are behind the most recent iteration of Halloween. I mean, we're talking about 30 years at least, right? 30 years of that has been
Yeah.
around.
Well, and Righteous Gemstones is pretty amazing too. That's one of like the hidden gems, Righteous Gemstones. You know what I did there?
Well
Uh,
done.
but it's a really good. It's just hilarious. Like, and I'm glad they picked up what's his face from Workaholics. He's such a great fit. The youngest brother.
Oh, the map. Yeah,
Yeah,
Adam DeMap. Workaholics.
his character is amazing. All the characters are amazing in their own right. Like the
Yeah,
sister's so good.
she's so
Uh,
good.
Such a good show. If anybody that hasn't seen Righteous Gemstones, it's a must watch for comedy fans. Well, and if you like that Danny McBride flavor, that's kind of the coolest part of McBride, right? He's like a true artiste, I think, because it's like when you see a painting and you're like, oh, that's a Van Gogh, oh, that's a Matisse. When you
Right,
see a show, you're like, oh, that's a McBride.
for sure. It's got that feel to it, that texture.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it's
yeah,
very
yeah.
unique. Yeah, but
Uh,
to the point, that's they're carrying on what we got with Mike Myers. Yeah, like we grew up with that dude.
well, I liked the last two Halloween movies as well. Like, I like that they brought back Jodie Foster,
Oh,
and of the latest ones, the
those are his.
latest last iterations were pretty good.
Those are
Uh,
his, man. Yeah,
oh, those are his.
yeah. Those are like the Jody Hill. And what's the guy's name? I
I
just
can't
said it.
believe
I
I'm
can't
so
think of his
dumb
name.
to all this.
Right. Well, I didn't know either. I fell into Vice Principals, which is another Danny McBride show that's on HBO and fantastic. But so I looked this guy up, and I come to find out all of this stuff. He'd met Jody Hill, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name again. He did George Washington. Anyway, just a great director. They all met in North Carolina. From there, they came out here. They did this thing. They did exceptionally well. And what's really cool to me, and this kind of parallels with something that we've had to do with the work, Curtis, is like they moved to Charleston. Like they have those movies were made in South Carolina.
Oh, very cool.
Hollywood is not the home of filmmaking necessarily
It's
anymore. And
over now. I mean,
that's exciting.
they ended. There's no subsidies to make film in LA anymore.
Truly,
Yeah, there's
uh,
all. I mean, they have a very small amount, but I think most of that gets sucked up by unions. All the
sure.
rest of the film subsidies are all in Canada, Atlanta now. There was a nice fat one in Louisiana, but I think Louisiana is so corrupt. I think they just ate through it, and
Uh,
it's dwindled down to almost nothing. They had to dial it back.
absolutely.
When and then I want to say somebody else is maybe has some subsidies going in the US. There's some other small ones around
Huh,
the Midwest. I know New Mexico has some, but
yeah.
all these different places are trying to bring in shooting and bringing in film except for LA.
Odd
Uh,
places too, like you said, like Wyoming or Tennessee.
right.
Tennessee, and it's pretty country, like all the U.S. is pretty country, so why not?
Right. Yeah,
Excuse me.
Tennessee's popping off right now. I know several people moving to Nashville, and they're talking about it being the new hotspot to be because it
For
already
sure.
has the big music industry. There's a ton more film and shooting going on there,
Right.
and it's bustling. Like the city's growing. There's the restaurant scenes grow. All the scenes in Nashville are growing and getting bigger and better month on month, and
I
no
think
state
it's
tax.
I think it's good news, man. I think things like Netflix. Well, we were talking earlier about the VHSs that we would rent. Your babysitter or whatever got a stack of VHSs and
Yeah.
spent the weekend watching that, and it like it's gone. It's an extinct thing. It doesn't. I think I saw an article. It was probably a few months ago now that they closed, or there's still one blockbuster that's open in the Dakotas or
Oh, there
something like
is.
that. Yeah, I think so. It was an odd thing to to see, but along came Netflix and wiped it all out. But look at what was born of it. It destroyed this one industry, but it gave birth to this whole thing, this golden era to some extent of content. Man, I mean, we got streamers from everywhere. This problem's been made, but it definitely gave birth to this huge, huge thing that we're all cashing in on now, dude.
Well, what Spielberg prophesized about it is he said what's going to happen is he's like, there's all these billion-dollar properties now, and all of them can't continue to be successful every single time. And he's like, and there'll be a moment where several billion-dollar properties fail back to back to back. And he's like, and when that happens, everything will shift and change from that point. And what he believes is that movie theaters are going to become more like a Broadway production, where there's far less films that are seen in
Oh yeah,
the fanfare. Like it'll be more of this event to go out to the theater, and you'll have movies that are running an entire season of the year over the course of a year.
well, is it? I mean, that's how movies were used to be done. Like a big thing, like E.T. There were books. Not, I mean, it was novelized, and all that stuff was rolled out at the same time. Like it was a completely different experience. These big blockbuster movies, and it's kind of gone away. And I look forward to it coming back, man. and they're so few and far between. Most recently, we got Dune. That was a big old thing, and it was great to go see in theaters. Further, Avatar, I look forward to. Admitted fanboy, I saw the first one, I loved it. Um, so I look forward to that collapse.
Sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty with my mic.
No, not at all.
You can hear me, Russ?
I got you, dude.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Not at all.
Uh, uh check.
Check, dude.
Okay, I think I'm back.
Sounds good to me, dude. Crispy.
I'm not back. Okay. Can you hear me?
Got you, buddy. Yeah.
Bad. This is my fault.
No worries, dude.
You want to? Okay. Check.
Check, dude.
Damn it. It's just I can't hear him. Stupid thing.
I'll keep checking in there, Curtis.
I can almost hear you.
Mm.
Oh, okay. I think we're
Check it in,
back.
dude. Check it in.
Fuck.
Check it in.
So what was the last thing you said there?
Well, you were talking about the Spielberg prediction, and I think it's good. You know, there is a lot of creation out of destruction, like the destruction of the old Hollywood system of contracting actors and everything. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff that came out of that, but after that, we got so much creativity, and I think the Netflix was another example. There was a big boom of creativity. I think it's peaked.
Well, I think we're on the downhill from that now
Yeah,
because what we're
for sure.
seeing is Netflix starting to dial back.
Yeah.
It's going to nothing.
No, I'm not catching you, dude.
Check, check.
Check, my dude.
Still cutting out, Russ?
Check it in, dude. Yeah, not hearing you now. Checking in, dude. Gonna keep checking in.
You hear me
Checking
at
in,
all,
Curtis.
Russ?
Checking in, buddy. Gonna keep checking in.
Man, it's time for a new mic, it looks like. But if you
Hit it
can
with
hear
that.
me,
Gotcha, dude.
I think we're good now.
Cool.
Um, Jesus. So
Netflix is dialing back.
back budgets. And, the Sandman has a really big budget.
Fuck, Curtis. I'm sorry, dude.
It's my fault.
I caught a third of that, maybe a fourth. Sounded interesting as shit though. The Sandman I'm interested in. I haven't followed the numbers on it.
You hear me, Russ?
Yeah, I got you, buddy.
Well, I can't hear now with the other plug.
So unfortunate.
Oh, now I hear you. Can you hear me?
In there.
Yeah, I just can't touch it.
Oh shit, you bumped it.
You can hear me though,
I
right?
got you now. I got you now. Yeah.
All right, let's just dangle this cord just so. Uh, yeah. Anyways, the Sandman's really cool. It's definitely a good watch. I thought it was gonna be. It starts off really emo and twilighty right
Yes.
off the jump,
I
and
was
you're
very
like,
shy.
"Still got me? There's a cut now." Okay. Uh,
Can't hear you,
um.
man. Sorry.
Okay. So it starts off really emo-y and it's a little bit sus, and you're like, is this gonna be what I think it's gonna be? And it is, and it's not. So like
Right.
they walked that fine line of pretty kind of concepts, we'll say, that happen throughout the show, but it's really well done and really well directed.
Oh.
Uh, there's a couple episodes that stand out as contained movie all in itself. At the end of
Uh,
the episode, I was like wowed by it. Like, oh, this
right.
is what all series should be, is where every episode's a standalone
Like
movie on its own.
experience. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
There was an episode of Stranger Things that was that way, and I don't mean to pan anybody or upset anybody here, but I did see Top Gun, right?
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I saw this episode of Stranger Things before I went to see Top Gun. And like at the end of the episode, like I mean, I'm almost coming out of my seat. Have you seen it?
Yeah, yeah,
All right, so running up that hill, and
yeah,
she's in Vecna's curse, or she's in Vecna's grasp, but then gets away and runs toward her kids, and it was just such this huge triumph. And I'm like, man, this was so much better
yeah.
than anything Top Gun.
Stranger Things is doing such a good job of they're doing these cliches of the 90s and 80s, but doing them so well. And then you're like, no, it's not. It's awesome.
It
Uh,
seems fresh. It seems like something
yeah,
that's new, despite all the the cliches. Anyway,
yeah.
so good. But curious about Sandman. So shout out. I'm sure you know this. Proof worked on that.
Oh yeah, shout out Proof.
Yeah.
Great previs. Great
Absolutely.
visual effects throughout the show. The Houdini guy on that show is awesome. Uh,
Underpaid, I'm sure.
Underpaid, I'm sure, but amazing particle systems,
Oh,
like all the effects part of everything so that's really what it is. Honestly, is there's not that much visual effects going on, but there's a bunch of Houdini scenes
God.
of the sand swirling up and
Good.
making things, and all of that stuff looks awesome too. Which is interesting because I saw a shift in VFX when the first J.J. Abrams Star Wars came out. When before there was these massive epic VFX sequences, like when Kenobi was riding the lizard dragon thing into
Right.
battle, and it was almost like a ride film. There was so
Right.
much going on, and it was so amazing visually that it just it wowed you. And that was the same era as when Transformers and all those did all this just massive amounts of things moving on screen where your eyes just can't track it all.
It's almost too much, Yeah.
Yeah. But then JJ's, it was like, oh, he's just got a matte painting and one X-Wing flying toward a matte painting.
Right. And a cool composition, just a great composition. Something
Yep.
that's like, oh, that's fucking interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
But I kind of missed that big epic sequence because
Sure.
that's what I'd come to expect from Star Wars. Like, where's my what's the little rolling ball robot? Uh,
BB-8, yeah.
Beatty, yeah. I wanted like a chicken chase cam with Beatty sequence. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
would that have been amazing? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like a 2 minute solid action sequence. Where we're chasing Beatty through just mayhem, but
Barely making it. Yeah.
there was none of that. There was a
Yeah.
matte painting and an X-wing flying in at it. They did do a lot of cool practical stuff, though. They built a lot of really cool on-set rigs and things like
Oh,
that,
right.
where you have a cockpit on an armature, so the pilot's really in there, kind of moving
Oh yeah.
around as they filmed them.
Oh, you feel the little bit of that, and that was one of the cool things. Sorry, I don't want to completely pan Top Gun. I'm sorry to just jump all over the place because
Nah, go
Top
ahead.
Top Gun was incredible for a number of reasons, and one of them was the actual camera in the jet doing these maneuvers. And a friend is in the military. So, when he's doing that G shit, that's real.
Yeah. Oh
Like that.
yeah.
I wouldn't know. I've never done it, but anyway, like that tactility of it was incredible. So I don't want to completely pan Top Gun, but I had such a better time with that Stranger Things episode. That single episode that was standalone, man. I mean, I would show it to anybody, and I think they would enjoy that, right? Like it's just clean entertainment. Anyway,
Well,
him
and
on.
and Stranger Things has been good because it's progressively got better and better every season. Like
Man,
the first season was this weird kind of one-off thing all on its own.
for
Like, what
sure.
is this weird show? And it totally worked. And you're
Right.
like, oh, Winona's back in a movie, awesome.
Yep,
Because like we all root for Winona, right?
for
We
sure.
we
Who
remember when
hates Winona?
she's a klepto and everything at one point in her life, and after
Absolutely.
that, she was kind of blackballed for a minute, and
Right.
we didn't hear from Winona. But the Gen X and the late term millennials, we like Winona.
Yeah, we're glad to see her back. Back
Yeah,
in
we're
business.
yeah, we're definitely glad to see Winona back. So yeah, and then so that season was really good and it wrapped really, really well. It was a good cliffhanger. And it almost could have stopped after that first
Well,
season.
sure.
It
I
was a
agree with you.
complete story.
Leave it alone. Possibly. I
Yeah.
feel like Dexter was another example of that. Sorry, I don't mean to step on you. I don't
No,
want to
go
step
ahead.
on your point, but Dexter was a great example of the same thing. Where after the first season, you could have left it. It was perfect. Leave it alone. But I'm glad they did everything else despite the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And then so Stranger Things season two, it was better and better and
better.
better, and now it's peaking in three. I feel like all shows kind of peak season 3 to 4
Sure. Sure.
because everyone in the production has enough time to settle in. The actors really all understand their roles.
Right.
And about season 3, about season 4, you're getting the best acting performances of everyone. The maximum amount of money is being spent on the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about season 5, everyone wants to get paid and things start to fall apart.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm the backbone of the show. You need to pay me for my time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or the actors start to become bored in the role, I feel like too.
Or
They got and if the show's good, they're starting to get fame from the role, so they're getting other offers coming in. There's other money starting to circulate and float around them.
and the show
Uh,
itself potentially suffers. Yeah. Usually
yeah,
suffers. Yeah.
yeah, usually suffers. So I think we got one more, and you know, do what they will with it. I
I'm
mean, how
curious.
how long can it go? 7 seasons, you think?
Do you know how many they have planned? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either.
If
I
I
don't think they
understand,
got. I don't think they thought they were gonna get past one.
I agree with you there. And that's interesting too, isn't it? Like they didn't have a plan for this stuff, but it's
No,
still so good. I don't know, man. It's just they're really great creative people. I think I'd love to work with them.
they,
Um,
they really are, and their pitch deck was awesome too.
I
If
miss it.
anybody out there, I think you can find it online, maybe,
Uh,
but somebody showed it to me, maybe George Anzilowitz, and really creative, well done pitch deck. Like
awesome.
it was dark. It felt like the show, and you can see why it got picked up because
Huh.
like it, an excellent initial inception, then those creatives making a great show.
Right.
It um, let's back up a little bit then. What was the first show you binge watched as a kid, like that you watched over and because usually when we were kids,
Uh, uh, the earliest I remember, Curtis, would be Transformers, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, Ninja Turtles. Like it was
yeah,
the Saturday morning stuff, right? Like we waited and wanted to get to that show. If that's what you're
Right.
asking, to the point, like it wasn't available. Like obviously, binging things the way that we can now wasn't available then. But if there's an equivalent, it would definitely be Saturday morning cartoons with the Ninja Turtles and the
Yeah, and
Transformers.
yeah, we watched a ton of Ninja Turtles and ton of Transformers.
Yeah.
Uh, that Transformers movie, so many big names in it. Yeah, Orson Welles is the voice of Omicron. Judd Nelson is Bumblebee.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
Leonard Nimoy is Megatron. Uh,
Are you kidding? I didn't know this, dude.
yeah,
I
and
didn't know
then
the original cartoon. It was a Japanese anime, right?
yeah, but the Transformers animated movie,
Oh, I got it. Okay, got you.
the
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Right. Right. Right.
the anime movie basically,
Yeah.
like the old
Yeah.
school. Remember at the end when Bumblebee grabs the Matrix
Yes.
is the end of the movie, and then what's the song? You got the touch, dun 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 dun. You got the
With the
power,
power. Yeah.
which also is the same song they sing in.
Boogie Nights. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a nice little shout out
Yeah.
from Boogie Nights to Transformers.
Incredible, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Speaking of, they did an album. Like it's not good, and I think it's intentionally not good. But for Boogie Nights, I think there's an actual album that he had. That hold on, Chess Rockwell, or was that his character's name? So you got
Chess Rockwell is the character's name. Yeah,
right, right. So Dirk Diggler and I can't think of John C. Reilly's character's name in the movie, but yeah, they did a whole album. As like as I mean, back to what you were saying about Spielberg, when a movie was an experience and it was rolled
yeah,
out, it rolled out here's this album that we created. Anyway, it's
yeah.
just that too
Well,
is a masterpiece, dude.
Boogie Nights is a masterpiece, and that was one of those too where the more times that you watched it, the you'd appreciate something new every single time.
It,
Uh,
it keeps giving for sure.
the the Asian kid with the firecrackers.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Cosmo, he's Asian.
yeah, yeah, that's one of the most amazing scenes ever in cinema. And they got Sister Christian going on in the background. It's such a great. And that's one of those that you maybe just like you recognize that it's good the first time you watch it, and then the second time you see that scene, you start to take in everything that's going on in that scene, and it's like, oh wow, this is some amazing like what a
Cor-
fun movie.
Choreography, like to put all that together, to think it out. Alfred Molina, oh what a performance and a cameo at that. Like because I think that part is okay. And one more thing, because like PTA Paul Thomas Anderson early on, he would do that. Like he'd chapter his movies out. He said, and one more thing, and I don't know if it was intended to be an addendum or not, but imagine the movie without that scene. Imagine Boogie Nights without "I'm gonna get you, you puppies," and him firing down in the middle of I don't know Pasadena somewhere.
Yeah. So apparently, Burt Reynolds hated the director.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, he thought he was too cocky,
That's
and
astonishing.
because Paul Thomas, he would he'd be all beside himself and happy about a camera that he did,
Sure.
and be like, no one's done this before, and Burt Reynolds is thinking, like, yeah, that's totally been done,
Right.
cocky young kid or whatever.
Sure,
So
sure.
apparently they didn't vibe at all, and Burt Reynolds didn't
Unfortunate.
show up to any of the post production movies or parties or events or anything. He was not into it.
Well, that was
Uh,
a role of a lifetime for that guy, to me.
yeah, I mean, well, Burt
He was
Reynolds
perfect.
he was a sex symbol, really. So
Sure,
he didn't have a lot of great movies. It was more, he was just, Burt Reynolds was for the ladies back in the
for
70s.
sure.
A
That
bunch of movies
mustache,
where he's
dude.
like slapping women and stuff.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, Boogie Nights might be his best actual acting movie.
I think.
Yeah, right?
And he was cut for Jack Horner, man. Like that guy was, I don't know, like
It's,
classy but sleazy, but rich, but still a gutter guy, got mind in the gutter. But at the same time, he's looking from the gutter at the stars. It was such a good character.
perfect casting, and also
Yeah.
everyone in that movie. There's a Cheadle. I'm a huge fan of Don Cheadle.
Yeah. Oh, and
Uh,
his character arc, trying to find a look,
yeah,
cowboy. I mean, like the humor in it, like you're saying, Curtis. I don't mean to be redundant, but it keeps unfolding into this like poem that's, and it's
it
huge.
yeah. And when he's showing off the stereos and he changes it to the country and starts
Sure.
vibing real hard with it. Hear that bass? Hear that bass?
Yeah, that was a good time, man.
uh,
Yeah, and on and on.
yeah, that's one of the greatest movies ever. So yeah,
I
we
agree.
watched circling back. We watched a lot. And that's what brought us to Boogie Nights as Transformers.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah.
tried to bring it back. Ever can come back. Uh, oh, did you lose me again?
Yeah.
Damn
Sorry,
this
bud.
thing. It's like all the cords are loose now. Can you hear me?
I got you now, bud. Yeah.
Okay. It is dropping occasionally. Okay, well, can you give us a check, Cameron?
Checking in, buddy. Checking in. God, what a pretty day. I'm sure the sun's setting on y'all, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, hopefully that holds for a minute.
Cool.
Um, yeah, sun's set here in Texas.
I see, buddy.
Damn, I think I lost you again.
Uh-oh. Keep checking in. Keep checking in. Man, I don't know. Probably hit 75 today.
Oh, in
Uh,
LA.
yeah. Got out on the pickleball court.
Yeah, it's been hot here. We finally been
Yeah.
getting some rain, which is much needed. It was like over 100 for months. It felt like.
I actually
Uh,
read a story about severe weather in Texas. Where are you in Texas, Curtis? Ish. Sorry. Like,
just right by Dallas.
okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. You told me that. I
but
see.
yeah, it's been. I would say it's been severe weather. Like if you
Yeah.
had to be outside every day for work or whatever,
Right.
Jesus, I don't know how you would do it.
Yeah. I
Um,
see.
so you dropped a bunch of good stuff on me as far as movies you've been watching, directors that you like.
Yeah.
Um, I really don't know where to start. I think we'll maybe Paul Thomas Anderson's a good place to start.
For
He's not
sure.
really in that echelon because he hasn't consistently continued to make epic films. I don't think we can
Right.
put him in that masters collection yet. The Joaquin Phoenix movie he did was interesting but long, and it definitely wasn't as powerful as Boogie Nights.
It didn't
Uh,
deliver. It does get better the more you watch it, but it does not deliver like that, dude. And even the subsequent movie, Magnolia, was fucking fantastic. I mean, Tom Cruise was, I think he was nominated for that, man. And he deserved
Mag-
it. Like, he was great.
yeah, Magnolia was really good. And that was another one of those interesting where it has a certain vibe to it that it really just felt different as soon as you started watching it, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, this is this kind of cool, different thing. And you're getting this feeling from the movie that you don't normally get from a regular movie. It starts to feel like art right away, I
Right
guess is the
away.
best way to describe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, TC's been in a lot of great movies too. He
Yeah.
The whole Scientology thing's a little bit sus, but he does pick the right roles when everything's said and done.
He sure does. I've been reading headlines about how tyrannical he is. Like obviously he's powerful and he pulls a lot of weight with who is it? Is it Paramount that made? I think it makes all of his movies. I think it's the Mission movies and
Maybe. I wonder if there's Scientology ties in Paramount.
potentially,
Nah,
man.
I don't think Paramount's been. I don't know. Paramount's been putting out really good stuff lately, though. They're
I
one of
agree with
my
you.
they're one of my favorite content makers right now.
Yeah, not hating at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I I, I don't think Scientology has too much to do with it. I'm sure it's more just money. And dude, he pulls a crowd. Like the people, the numbers that Top Gun has pulled down is pretty great.
Yep.
For a 50-plus-year-old dude. And did you see it? Did you see Top Gun?
I haven't yet. One of my friends saw it and he's like, it's amazing. He said the only thing that kind of bugged him, he was like, it seems like it's an alternate timeline. Like if the
Mhm.
80s just kept continuing onward, that was the future that they're existing in. It's like almost a alternate reality timeline.
Well, it's funny you put it that way because it feels like Cold War era type stuff, which is when the first one was made. And
Right.
Rocky Five comes out, he's slugging it out with Dolph Lundgren, and we're all like, "Fuck the commies," like
Yeah.
it does feel like that, because I'm so sorry, I may have spoiled it for some people and might have just spoiled it for you, but yeah, it's got a Cold War feel to it. It does
Well,
feel like the '80s again.
I don't think that spoils anything. I think that's what we expected, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, that propaganda has really never stopped, right? Since the 80s. I guess there
Right,
was kind of a lull in the early 2000s where we didn't really have Russia as the bad guys as much. Uh, but they're back.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
uh, so let's get into. I mean, a couple of directors that you dropped was James Cameron and Kubrick.
For
I guess
sure.
stand out in that list the most. And I think if we're going to do a top three directors, you know, Spielberg, Kubrick, and Cameron, not in that particular order, right?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
No. And even further, like I think those guys are somewhat separate. And it's interesting to talk about it this way because I don't want to, like, I respect every one of those guys so much because they've done a lot. But I also feel like that one was an art. It's just difficult to say. I feel like Kubrick made masterpieces every time he touched, like, everything he touched was gold.
Everything.
Contrarily, Spielberg has done some trash, you guys. I mean, like, I don't mean to be this way. What's the last great Spielberg that you? I mean, mine was Munich. If that was the last Spielberg, I was like, fuck yeah, that was a great experience. It was Munich.
I mean, Ready Player One was a fun movie.
Was it?
I
I
I
didn't see
didn't.
it. I missed it.
Okay, if you didn't see it, it was like this whatever run of the mill VFX
Yeah.
extravaganza, and it was a fun movie to watch. Like you had a good
Oh,
time watching it, and then by
cool.
the end, you're like, oh, that was good.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
surprisingly good.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay. So yeah, it
It-
wasn't bad, but I mean, was it Jurassic Park? Was it fucking Minority Report? Dude, I stumbled into just a few
Minority
scenes.
Report.
It was on the screen at a bar that I was in. We were grabbing a drink or whatever, and I couldn't look away. It's just, I mean, it's so well composed. So yeah, I mean, like, it's difficult to say. Well, he's not an artist, and he doesn't deliver all the time because Spielberg has done so much. And
Minority Report's a masterpiece.
truly,
Yeah, that's like
truly,
the one of the definitive sci-fi movies ever.
ever. I mean,
And
and it's what gives us all this, dude. To some extent, I don't know how much credit we should give that movie and Spielberg for the touchscreens that we're using now, but a
well,
little
he
bit.
actually brought in concept on that movie a team of futurists. So he
Oh,
found the foremost futurists in the world and had them come together in a think tank and basically in the movie. So that's
amazing.
why so much of the stuff in the movie we're seeing now,
Yeah,
where
applicable.
stuff and there's pushback from the populations, thankfully, like kind of stuff in the mic. But like face scanners, scanning QR codes and stuff like that.
Sure.
When,
Facial recognition, absolutely.
right. And yes, I can hear it cut in and out. Um, into the phone.
Gonna keep checking in, Curtis.
You hear me?
Got you, buddy. Checking in.
All right. I think we just made a solution on the fly.
Great.
Boys. Yeah, the quality's going to be a little bit worse because I'm hooked up to the Wi-Fi now, but that's much better than a cutting in and out.
Sure.
So, um, what were we talking about? Spielberg. Spielberg does have a few misses, but like you were just saying, is it Jurassic Park? Is it
All right.
E.T.?
Yeah.
Is
I
it
feel
these
like I feel
mega?
like every Kubrick though is that way. Like every one of them, they're unique. They are loud but subdued, and I don't know, man. I think they're masterworks, every single one. And I can't say the same thing of a Spielberg thing. And um, I'm again not to hate because man, I mean, who? What is cinema today without Steven Spielberg, right? And yeah, James Cameron. I mean, so early on, my parents, I've come to find out in my older years, were very liberal with what they allowed us to watch. Again, I'm watching Freddy Krueger as a young kid. My first sex scene was Basic Instinct. I think
Okay.
anyway, that was there. It was very impressionable, dude. You've seen Kill Bill, right? Michael
Yeah.
Parks, he's telling Uma Thurman that he knew Bill as a kid, right? And he would take him to go see these movies, and whenever these beautiful blondes showed up, he'd start sucking on his thumb. And he said, "I knew right then this boy has a thing for blondes," and that's the effect that Basic Instinct had on me. I think.
That's
Uh,
hilarious.
yeah. But some of the early stuff as well were not so much Alien. I think I watched that when I was later, but when I was older. But Aliens came out around a time where cinema was important to us as a family. We go to Blockbuster and get shit. Now it's funny because we were getting them. If you remember the way that things were set up then, it was like a year. The movie comes out May 2022. It's not available to rent until May of 23. So we were watching it a year later. But I remember James Cameron's Aliens
Mm.
just like I mean, it took the horror movie that was before, and turned it into something else, man. It did it so
Well,
successfully.
and Ridley Scott is almost up in that list, but Ridley Scott's that same kind of vein as Spielberg, where there's some bad Ridley stuff, but
Truly.
then there's some utter masterpieces from Ridley Scott. So we
Oh
talked
yeah.
about this. Me and Donnelly talked about this a little bit on the other podcast. Is how Ridley Scott is an artist too. By the way, he's the guy that draws all his own storyboards.
Yeah.
He isn't just he has a creative vision that he executes as a director in all of his films.
Yeah, man.
And the
Yeah.
choice to use H.R. Geiger defined an entire generation and era of sci-fi
Incredible,
where
right?
when all of the sci-fi that you see from Starcraft to all of it really is rooted in a H.R. Geiger Ridley Scott universe. And shout out to Raised by Wolves. Again, we've already said this before, but I'll say it
Yeah.
again. Do everything that you can on social media to save Raised by Wolves to make sure it gets picked up by anybody, really, to keep that show alive and give him money. Because he was doing the same thing again with that show. Is he's now defining the modern look of sci-fi and what that is and what that means
In that
with that
show?
show. Yeah, in that show.
Well, it's
And
interesting. I started it. What was it? I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry, Curtis. Please go ahead.
I was just saying, Raised by Wolves is so it's I think getting dropped by HBO, and they're looking for
Fuck.
somebody else to pick them up. And there's a lot of fans that are rallying for somebody to pick them up, so I'm sure they will. But you just got to keep pressing until Amazon or Netflix or somebody swoops the show back up because
Well,
it's a slow burn is the problem, and a lot of people don't have patience for that these days. They
understood.
want they want to get right into it, and it almost feels like you're living with the people on the show after a while. When you start binging it and you're watching it, you just feel like you're kind of a bystander in their little community in the show.
Huh.
And you're learning about things as they learn about things, which is a
Gotcha.
really unique feeling to get from a show. That you actually feel like you're part of the community of the actors when you watch it.
2 seasons.
it 2 seasons so far,
Mm.
and then yeah. So and to Ridley Scott, like one of my all time list of movies is Gladiator,
Oh, cool.
where every single frame you can pick out and put on the wall. Shout out every frame of painting.
Absolutely.
And the score is amazing. Is a Hans Zimmer, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of Joaquin's Phoenix best roles ever, maybe Russell Crowe's best acting performance ever. And it's just such a powerful movie. It's one of those where the first time I saw it, it was just kind of like, oh, that's good. And then after 5 years passed and I revisited it, and my knowledge of the art world and my knowledge of filmmaking was better.
Right.
I appreciated so much more about the movie.
Right.
And now having watched it again recently, my mind's like blown watching it.
Absolutely.
Where
Well,
you're
I think you and
go
I had
ahead.
a conversation at work about that, and I'm sorry to be redundant, but I think it was an interesting point. You're absolutely right about that, right? Like you pull any frame out of that movie, it tells a story. It's not just that it's a cool comp, but it tells you exactly what's going on. You know, like it sets the stage. Amadeus was another one that was Milos Forman. I don't know if you ever saw the Amadeus with Academy Award winner for Best Actor in that role, but it was fucking fantastic. It was the same way. Like any frame that you would pull out was absolutely perfect. It told the story. It was a masterwork. And what I'm saying is, I watched it again after that conversation, and you're absolutely right, man. Now is better than it's ever been because of what I understand now, because of the work that I do. You know, I'm just exposed to a better understanding of what that guy was up to and how well it works. And you know, you made a point about it, or I noticed something when I was watching it. Sometimes, like the screen direction and you know, which side of the line you're on, it's all over the place, but it works, and that's incredible. Like it's a huge feat, a huge masterwork.
And the Amadeus, I haven't thought of that movie in a long. Is Robert Downey Jr. in Amadeus?
No,
Or no, that was
there was a
he's in
funny guy
another
in it.
period piece in that. Amadeus is one of those amazing cinematography feats. And also set design, costume
Costume.
design,
Oh,
like all of that stuff is just such a crazy high level. I don't think we'll see another movie like that get made for a long time.
not that well.
Um,
Not done that well, I don't think, man.
no, where they'll spend the amount of money you have to spend to pull something like that off.
Right.
Period pieces are some of the most expensive. That's one of the most expensive endeavors you can try and take on creatively. Like, oh,
Oh,
we're gonna set this in whatever century England.
right. Right.
uh, now they'll just, we chop off an existing cityscape and then add the top half in 3D and say, look, it looks old.
Right.
But it's not as doesn't have that feeling like those old school movies that had these massive budgets and
Right.
so many true artists working on them.
Truly. Truly.
Yep.
Yeah. So the idea of a period piece today, it's done. It's just not done that well. And back to your point, so this is I'm kind of all over the place, but the Spielberg thing about the spectacle of a movie, and that was back then. Whenever Amadeus was made, that's exactly what Captain America or the Avengers. That finale, you know, the amount of money that they poured into it, the attention that they poured into it, and the fanfare around it was something that I mean, obviously, they didn't, the movies, the visual effects driven movies weren't a factor then. Instead, it was Amadeus, it was Barry Lyndon, you know, much more subdued movies, but they made such a production out of it, spent so much money on promoting it and turning it into an element of the culture that I think it. I look forward to Spielberg's prediction coming true.
Yep.
That is.
Well, and you mentioned another movie that's one of your all-time favorites is Apocalypse Now, and
It is.
it's one of my favorites as well, but a long movie, right? Really long. I almost wonder. The thought I had as soon as I read it, I was like, "Oh, he likes Apocalypse Now." I love that movie. And then the first thought I had was, does it hold up today for new viewers?
It's a
Like,
great
does
question.
does anyone have the patience for that movie these days? Because it's a slow burn character piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
A
and
3.5 hour long character piece that, yeah, yeah, and masterfully well done.
yeah, most people want to get to it. Like I heard a lot of complaints on the new Dune that there was too much talking and too much politics and all that. And I was like, that's why Dune's cool, is because it has all these politics and all this deep sociology, sci-fi sociology.
Well,
Like that's the interesting part of Dune.
and even further than that, Curtis, I think that they did a great job of getting everything that did happen of significance in the original book into a very concise, short, little amount of time. Because if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's huge, man. I mean, the
Yep.
universe is ginormous, and they brought that sense of scale with the little bit of dialogue and exposition that they did. You know,
Yep.
I thought it was masterfully well done.
Yeah, very, very well done. Well, he handled Blade Runner really well too.
Do you
You
think
know,
so? Yeah.
yeah, the new Blade Runner was great as well. Like I feel like he's a director. Of course, his name's escaping me. It's
Denis Villeneuve. I,
Villeneuve, yes,
I'm butchering
Villeneuve,
it. Villeneuve. I'm butchering it.
Villeneuve.
Sure.
But he is somebody that cares about canon and understands. He's a nerd. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? At
Yeah.
the end of the day, he's a nerd that gets it, and he understands why canon's important and why you need it, and like he gets the property and what it's supposed to be. I would
Sure.
I would with confidence give him any property and know that he's going to handle it with care.
Give that guy the Predator, right?
Oh my god. Or I was what I said at the end of my review I was like give it to Nicholas Refn. Nicholas Winding Refn
Oh, that would
would
be
make a
fantastic.
amazing Predator. Because he's another guy that gets it. Like that whole crew is so cool. Like he hangs out with Guillermo del Toro,
Does it?
Nick
Uh,
Refn,
uh,
Hideo Kojima is in with those guys too.
no way.
Yeah, like in the last video game that Kojima did, Death Stranding, it had Norman Reedus was the star of the game.
Oh,
So
oh yeah.
so you you play as Norman Reedus, but characters in the game is Guillermo, and then you meet Refn at a point in the game, and it's so cool when you run into him. Like when you first uh, Guillermo plays this character called Dead Man. And when you first meet Dead Man, you're like, oh, it's Guillermo, and then he's all Guillermo-y in the game, and you're like, oh, this is so cool. It just makes you smile as soon as it
That's
happens.
amazing, dude. I
Yeah,
had no idea. I had no idea. So he didn't do that with Konami, or who was it that it was
they
making?
did. No, it was it with Sony
So he,
property.
because I know like there was some big kerfuffle whenever he left. Whoever he made those Metal Gear movies.
Yeah,
I say movies because whatever it's as close to cinema as games have come that I've ever played. And I don't play that much. I think you obviously play a little bit more than I do. If you played this most recent Hideo Kojima game, then you definitely
yeah.
play more video
Well,
games
and I
than I
think
do.
yeah, and Sony's letting him spread his wings a little bit more. So I think he is directing a horror feature now.
Hmm.
And I think there is some collab with Guillermo and Nick Refn in that mix in some kind of way. I know Norman Reedus wanted to do a Silent Hill with Kojima, a Silent
Ah,
Hill game, and then that got squashed by Konami because, like as you said, there was this big falling out. He switched and went over to Sony, and now I think they're plotting on some sort of new property, and I don't know if it was going to be realized as a game or a movie or
uh-huh.
what, but I think it'll be Norman Reedus starring in some sort of horror machination from Kojima, which
Very
should be
cool.
pretty cool.
Very cool. Exciting. Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of exciting and those guys, how stoked on Pinocchio are you?
Pinocchio.
Yeah, the Del Toro, right? Like, isn't it a Guillermo Del Toro thing on Netflix?
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure
Um,
too, right? Like, we have confidence in.
yeah, I have confidence in Del Toro. I haven't seen anything from Del Toro I didn't like yet.
Did you see the Lady in the
Um,
Water, or not Lady in the Water? I'm so sorry. Shape of Water.
I
I
did see
missed
The
that
Shape
one.
of Water.
I
The,
missed it. You know.
the Shape of Water was really good. It's another one of those where, just like we talked about McBride as being like a true artist,
Right.
again, another person that's a true artist, where the minute
Right.
you start to watch a Del Toro film, you're like, oh, this is a Del Toro.
It feels like his stuff. Yeah. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm in his head. You know, and yeah, that's a cool thing. That's unique. You know, Darren
Yep.
Aronofsky's another one that's that way to me. I think all of his movies
Oh,
are very different, but they all have their own little feel. I mean, it's an Aronofsky feel, dude.
Aronofsky. Yeah, Aronofsky stuff's very cool too, and he's one of the he's one of those directors that I kind of there's directors I appreciate, and then there's directors I kind of idolize. And
Huh.
I don't know if it, and maybe some of the greats I don't idolize as much as
Uh,
like Fincher. I idolize
for
Aaron
sure.
Aronofsky. I idolize, but I appreciate Ridley Scott, Steven
Kubrick.
Spielberg, James
Yeah.
Cameron,
Yeah.
Kubrick.
Yeah. Yeah.
but they're kind of in this whole echelon of their own. But there's something about like the Finchers and the Aronofskys. I don't know who else would be on that list on the top of my head, but Aronofsky does so many. Go ahead.
Nick Refn, I think.
Yeah,
I
Nick
think
Refn too. I idolize what Nick Refn's doing with film.
I do too. He did. There was a series he did on Amazon that was disappointing to me, but it felt like his stuff. You're watching a Refn thing. What was the first of his that I saw? Or the first I saw was Drive. That's how I met him. And then I went back and watched all the other stuff. The Valhalla Rising with
Valhalla Rising is one of my all-time favorites too.
Man,
it's like a silent film basically.
I was like, where was this movie? How have I not heard about it? Because it was so well done. And like you said, it was basically silent. I think it was. I mean, there was a little bit of dialogue,
Did they even though? I think it was more like grunts and maybe like.
Well, I know we learned that he was a slave and that he somehow was released from his slavery. I think he won it. He killed somebody or something. Anyway,
but that's what I mean. It's just amazing visual storytelling. They didn't tell. No one told you that in the movie. You figured all that out as you were watching. When they do the first scene when he's fighting tied to the stake, you're like, that's when you sit back and you're like, oh, this is gonna be an awesome movie.
And when you say ultra violence, like when you were talking about the Predator, like he's definitive. The way that it's like pulled so tight before it finally whip cracks into this. I mean, Drive was my first time seeing it, but all of a sudden some dude's head's bashed in, or Bryan Cranston's wrist is opened. You're like, oh my Anyways, it's special. It's a special gift. So anyway,
and sadly, we need ultra violence as a culture.
Unfortunately,
it's part of the American culture.
For sure.
Is awesome, shocking ultra violence dropped just at the right time.
Right.
Is the American way.
Right, dude. We will eat it up, make
shock
it
shock and awe, baby.
But I think that dude is oh, did I lose you?
No, I hear you.
Okay. So he's doing a series with Netflix. I have no idea what it's about, but I mean, he's doing some more content, and it's coming to Netflix. I don't know, sometime soon. Of course, Gary Cameron, I know, but I'm looking forward to it. It's one of those things like, thinking about it. Aronofsky has a new movie coming with Brendan Fraser as like a extraordinarily obese guy.
Oh, cool.
Trying to reconcile with his daughter. That's a familiar theme with particularly the wrestler, right?
Yeah.
Like the wrestler tried to make amends with his daughter. So thematically, it sounds like the wrestler, but I think it's a different struggle. And I look forward to it. I'm stoked on it. I mean, like you, I idolize the guy, and I look forward to his next piece.
There's a lot of that melancholy trying to reconcile the past. That's a constant theme in Aronofsky, where you can feel that's probably something he deals a lot with in his own mind. Regret. Because it translates, regret and trying to reconcile it and not being able to.
Right.
Is something,
absolutely.
Yeah, as you can tell, that's something that's been part of his karma, this go around for Aronofsky. And Aronofsky does so many cool subtle things, like that epic soundtrack from Requiem from a Dream, the and that was actually bought and repurposed for Lord of the Rings and a bunch of other stuff after that.
Really?
Yeah, if you watch one of the Lord of the Rings, they drop that track at one of the epic moments in the movie.
No shit.
But the cool part about that is the soundtrack in Requiem slowly over the course of the movie raises in volume.
Oh, interesting.
So the soundtrack's really low at first, and it crescendos at the highest volume in the movie when it's that crazy scene where it's cutting off the arm and the mom's going nuts in the house and all those clips are happening. The pacing is peaked. The music is peaked. And that's what ass to ass is happening. All those things. Yes, and that's what I mean. That's why I idolize him as an artist. It's like, dude, you're fucking blowing my mind. That's how you blow someone's mind.
Absolutely. Sizzling, dude. Sizzling my brains, man. Absolutely. Well, and it's like one of those things you don't want to go back and experience it. Like, I don't want to go back and watch that movie, but I have. No. And I do it because of the craft, like picking up on something like what you're talking about there. Like, holy shit. This is not just a crescendo of images and all that. It's a crescendo of everything. Anyway, and it's so well done and so well composed. I look forward to his next stuff too, man.
And pulling off that remember those quick cuts of doing the heroin and stuff?
Yeah.
With the whoop, zip, grit, shit. Yep, and then whoop. Like that was kind of, I mean, a real film nerd will correct me that type of thing has been done before.
For sure.
But that stood out in my mind. The first time I saw that, it was impressive. Where when
Absolutely.
you saw that little quick cut, you were like, "Oh, that was awesome!" And then they both lean back and laugh right after it,
right.
and then you're like, "This movie's great."
Yeah, and it tells the story. You know, like it without seeing him put a needle in, without seeing all of that, just cut, and you're there. You know, you told that story.
Yeah, you see the blood go up into the needle, and then Aronofsky's definitely one where I remember seeing Pi for the first time and being just so impressed at how weird and again that Aronofsky feel that no one else has besides him. And maybe that's how we should be looking at these different directors, is they all are artists, the good ones anyways. Like Wes Anderson is another one that's
Truly.
just like making true art. Aronofsky's making true art. Refn, and that's not to say. So I don't even dare say this, but are the Camerons and the Spielbergs making true art? Do you feel like?
Great question. Or are they making good stuff that sells? Stuff that sells.
Or are they making amazing cinema? Are they making amazing cinema, or are they making? Of course, they're making art. Like, don't get me wrong on that point. Like, of course it's art, but are they artistes?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Does it have a feel? Because isn't that one of the things about the Spielberg experience is it's universal. You know, it's like you know, it's bubblegum flavored movies. Now, it's excellent bubblegum. You know, like this stuff lasts forever. It's so good. I mean, 30 years later, I'm still chewing on Jurassic Park. But you know, it's just it appeals to everybody. Where I know that Refn turns people off. I've shown people his stuff, and like I've lost friends, and that's an exaggeration. But you know, it's like I do not like that guy, man. Fuck that. You know,
they don't want your movie advice anymore.
Yeah. Find out what he watches, and let's don't watch that sort of thing.
Well, is the Spielberg and the Camerons of the world so good and so pop that they don't even have an opportunity to stand on their own because everyone immediately copies them right away? And then you have you have everyone making a Spielberg-esque or a Cameron-esque film after Terminator 2, for example. Like after Terminator 2, everyone was trying to make Terminator 2, pacing-wise, visual effects-wise.
Even the sequels tried to make Terminator 2, and they weren't able to do it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You can't make that movie again. Not in Cameron's way.
No.
Yeah, I don't know too much of the guy really outside of the filmmaking. I know about the deep sea diving and the submarining and all that kind of stuff. And I know Avatars. I've mixed. I loved the first Avatar. Saw it in 3D when 3D was a thing in the movie still, and it was incredible. Again, where I think I'm just dancing around the same point. An incredible cinematic experience, but if we start pulling that thing apart and picking it apart, like story wise, you're like, did I just watch Tarzan?
Right.
You know what I mean? When all the animals come to the aid at the end, and they're just running with like all of the creatures running with them at the end of the movie. You're like, did I just watch Tarzan?
Yeah.
And is it? It's such a strange thing. It's I think that when you're so popular, it reminds me of a quote from Robin Williams where he was worried that he wasn't funny because so many people loved him that he never felt like he could get an honest opinion out of anybody. So after his shows, once he was popular, he would always be asking everyone like, was it really funny? Or do you think everyone was just laughing at me because they're supposed to laugh at me?
Right.
And I feel like when it's that pop and that good, it kind of becomes its own thing.
Sure.
Where it's almost not art anymore.
Well, it's a funny thing. Sorry, bear with me. A little bit of a story. Last night we went to somewhere in Hermosa Magic and Comedy Club, whatever, something like that. And it was obviously there were 10 stand-up comics. They had 10 minutes apiece. We saw Paul Reiser.
Oh yeah,
saw Paul Reiser do like 5-10 minutes worth of stand-up, and he was kind of funny. He wasn't the best act, but he was
Right.
composed. And dude, I don't know about you, Curtis, but I don't think I could do it. I mean, like comedy is a very special talent, I think. And like it's harder than drama. I could probably do a dramatic scene up there and cry and expose my soul if I was at gunpoint. But comedy would be something else. I don't know if I could pull that off. But anyway, he pulled it off, and to that end, like we're all sitting around laughing. But is it? Are these people really that funny, or is it because we're sitting here watching them and they better be funny? Dance, motherfucker, and it's gonna be fun. But we laugh because of the setting. We laugh because we're supposed to laugh, or it's a great movie because it is such a spectacle. And there's nothing really unique about it. There's nothing really Refn about it. There's nothing really Cameron that makes it stand out. I've dealt with a lot of the hate, and I don't know how much traffic you expect, but I am admittedly a fanboy of the Avatar movies. I thought they were great. I mean, I walked out of that theater just like I was somewhere else. I went to another planet for a couple of hours. I thought it was a masterpiece of storytelling. And I often get it, right? It's just a repeat of Fern Gully. It's a repeat of
Right.
Pocahontas. Well, I mean, true, and to some extent.
Well, and it is.
To
It
some
is.
extent, they're
But I
absolutely
saw
right.
Avatar 3 times in the theater.
Yeah,
It,
I saw it a few times, but I don't remember the gene splicing with an alien race from either of those other two movies, or like the intergalactic space travel. I don't remember those things in that. So while on the one hand it is definitely those two uh, ideas, right? Like those two themes, or the themes of those two previous properties. I also think that it's something that's very unique and well thought out. Like it works. The only problem, and I can't explain it, is unobtainium. For God's sake, come up with a better word.
Yeah, that's the worst. But all right. So here's where I guess after that said, I would like to know from James Cameron whether he planned it out to reach the broadest possible audience. So he used those themes knowing that they're a simple enough theme to reach all ages and all audiences worldwide. And if he made that creative decision consciously, then kudos, right?
Oh, okay. So
But
you give him credit for making that choice.
yes, because you can't go make whatever movie you're going to make if you want it to be the biggest, best movie in the
Mm,
world. If you want to sell the most tickets worldwide, more than any other movie that's ever existed, you can't make the movie you want to make.
fair
It
point.
it has to have there's certain guardrails that are up that if you cross those guardrails, you're cutting out audience.
The universal appeal, yeah. That's
Yep.
interesting. That's an interesting point because it is very safe. I mean, it succeeded everywhere, right? Like it didn't even offend. I don't want to upset anybody here. It didn't even offend the Chinese government. Like I think they
Yeah.
aired Avatar there, right?
Yeah.
Without
Totally.
without question, And I know there's been some censorship of some stuff that's been sent over there by Disney and a variety of other places, but Avatar was let in without issue. It was really safe. It was a really safe project that did appeal to a lot of people. That's a good point. Good point.
Yep. Yep. So and now that I've actually said it out loud, I'm sure that's what he did. I'm sure he just wasn't like, this is the most awesome story I've ever thought of, and we're going
Right.
to make it like this. He probably
Right.
has, much more complicated concepts in his head and, much cooler ideas that'll never see the light of day
Right.
because, he gets $1 billion to make a property because they know
Jesus.
they're going to make 5 billion from it.
Oh, and it's kind
And
of exciting.
yeah, and it will be good. It will be good. Like
I
there's
think
no
so too.
way. I don't think it can flop. And so all that said, that's what Prey was trying to do with the Predator.
Ah,
Was trying to widen the audience. So they went instead of horror, they made it adventure because adventure is more palatable for the
sure.
masses.
Sure.
And every time there was about to be ultraviolence, they did the setup for ultraviolence, and then they cut away from it.
I
Uh,
see.
so and it happened over and over and over, and it was just this very simple adventure story where it really didn't matter what the bad guy was. The Predator wasn't important to that story at all,
Right.
really.
Right. It could have been a rabid boar or something like
Yeah,
that.
it would have been the exact same story if it was a rabid boar. That
And
this,
throwback to the first one, by the way. I don't know if the boar was rabid, but you remember like Mac.
yeah,
Yeah.
where it comes out of the bush and they level it with the MG, and then everyone laughs.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
shout,
man.
shout out Jesse Body Ventura. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, and that's where, I mean, a lot of people liked Prey. It's getting a lot of acclaim,
Yeah.
for a lot of BS acclaim, really. They're throwing out some crazy words around that thing. Masterpiece, perfect. Like, what? You shouldn't just throw around these words. These words have meaning.
They mean things, absolutely. And perfect
Yeah,
means something, dude. I don't. Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Masterpiece? I don't know. The thing was a solid 6. I don't know about masterpiece.
Oh,
Jesus.
God.
The paid reviews are out of control.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Well, isn't that a thing now? Like, can you rely on the Rotten Tomatoes reading?
no, not from critics. That's all fake.
Right. Exactly.
Audience
So
audience reviews will let you know what's up with something.
on a Rotten
Like,
Tomatoes, like let's say, I don't know, Toy Story, and not. But actually, is there another Toy Story coming? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, is it Rotten Tomatoes from the critics? And I've read that. I'm just confirming with you. Like that's you shouldn't
oh,
rely
it's
on the
totally
critics' reviews. Yeah,
100% fake. Yeah,
I
critic
see.
reviews are 100% fake. The audience review will let you know what something is, and you can actually see where that's most blatant, because you'll see like 90% from the critics, 20% from the consumers,
Right.
and you can compare those two things. Which, it's great to have that, right? Because before, you only got whatever the critics were saying. You could never see what people were saying about it.
Well, that's a good point. So who sold out? Did Rotten Tomatoes sell out, or did the critics sell out? Like, so if
The
this
critics
critic,
is sold out.
I
Yeah,
see, got
they're
it. So
getting some sort of they're getting access by giving
sure.
good reviews, access that they wouldn't have otherwise if they didn't give those positive reviews.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Like in the warfare between these studios, like they'll run pieces that pan a movie that they haven't even seen yet. Like
Right.
oh my god, what's coming? Avatar is horrible because I don't know whoever competes with Disney and Fox. Let's say
Y-
Paramount's competing.
Yeah.
They'll pay some writers to pan it, so that let fewer people will see it.
Well, that was always the thing too with like music award shows.
Uh,
So, Viacom owns half the labels in the music industry, right? So Viacom will put on an award show where they celebrate the artists of Viacom,
right,
and they choose the best artists of Viacom, and it's not fan driven. So like you'll notice that in those award shows, they'll call it out when it's actually a fan vote for something. Like, fans voted that
ah,
Taylor Swift video is the best one or whatever. But
interesting.
otherwise, it's just literally the whole spectacle is just so they can pump their bags and be like, who the greatest artist is? Our artist.
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
you know,
what's
get on
true
up
anymore,
here.
Curtis? What's true anymore, buddy?
Yeah. So I mean, and that's the same situation that happens throughout all industry. Really, is
Yeah,
the big money sets up media to pump their bags.
for sure.
Happens in the financial world, the entertainment world, the everything. That's what's going on. When you hear positive press about anything, it's because that positive press is owned by those that own the content, or financial instrument or whatever that they want
Sure.
you to purchase.
Other political party, all that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, yeah, political party, whatever. That
Yeah.
media isn't. That media is not happening organically. Um. So Cameron, so I mean, we can talk more about. We can talk. Cameron's another director we could talk about forever too.
For
The
sure.
Abyss is still holds up.
Well,
Uh,
it's funny, like when I sent you that list, I didn't even think of the Abyss, but wow, the Abyss as well. Like I was thinking T1, T2. What else was after that? Titanic, of course. I mean, it's not the same. That's the thing. It's a completely different movie than those other two. But I completely forgot about the Abyss. What a great film!
it still holds up. I watched it recently again,
What a great
and
film, dude.
it's so good. It's so
So good,
good.
man.
And again, it's one of those things that after you watch that, immediately it's set. That's what I mean. They're setting the bar
For
for
sure.
things, and so I don't know. I don't know. And again, I'm just trying to reconcile that whole being an artist thing versus setting the bar,
Right.
which I don't think those. I think those things are kind of mutually exclusive. Like, but yes and no. Like, I'm so confused in my own head about it now that
I
we're
hear you,
talking
buddy.
about. because once The Abyss came out, everyone's like, "Oh, this is how you make a fucking movie.
Right.
Like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is
Textbook.
how you have a sad scene. This is
Right.
how you make a suspenseful scene. This is
Right.
how you inspire awe from the audience.
Absolutely.
Like,
That's how you do visual effects. And
this is how
all.
you do
Yeah.
visual effects, and the
Yeah.
visual effects even hold up.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
they don't need to be better than they already were for that movie,
For
really.
sure. For sure.
And and then he drops the Terminator on us and all these other epics where he's a multi-billion dollar if you could give a worth to James Cameron, what's his
Jesus.
worth?
What is that? Right.
Like if he's a franchise you're gonna buy, he's
Sheesh.
he's worth
Jesus.
probably, if we were gonna sell James Cameron on the open market, I bet we could get like 14 or 15 billion for him at
At
least.
least.
At
At
least,
least.
if not 30. Now that I said that number, 30 billion. I bet you if he was a property for sale, we could sell James Cameron for $30 billion to Disney, or somebody would snatch him up for 30 bill.
Yeah. Well, how much
Uh,
was the merger? How much was the purchase of Fox? Because I know Fox has a
Fox,
lot.
100 billion maybe?
All right. All right. Well, some of
When
that
it,
was James Cameron, right?
yeah, I guess it was. Some of that was James Cameron.
Uh,
Um, yeah, so maybe he is worth like 30 bill on paper.
maybe,
Like,
dude. That guy.
because I'm sure you break it down like that when you're doing a purchase like that. Like, oh, we
Yeah.
get James Cameron too, and he's worth at least X out of this whole amount of money.
Sure. Sure.
He's
And
probably a big part of that deal.
well, all those titles that he's created too. I mean, like I don't know how. I know Fox fucked up whenever they sold or they didn't keep Star Wars, but I
Yeah.
don't think they made that mistake again. So they own the Terminator. They own, and that's what's so disheartening about the Disney ownership of stuff is how it's Star Wars everything now. Yeah, of course we got Star Wars
Well,
back.
and we're not confident that they're going to handle these amazing IPs with care.
Exactly, and they're not. I mean, they're obviously not, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
because they're showing us they don't.
right,
Kathleen Kennedy,
right, right.
um, where there's no respect for the IP or the canon or why it's great or why there's no respect for the consumer at all, really, with a lot of these properties. And so it's scary when you see them eating up all these other properties. And we're like, oh man, these are such great IPs that now we're not confident that they're going to be treated in the right way.
And you're clearly not doing it. Prey being the most recent example, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, well, that was yeah, exactly. They went the adventure route with it and tried to broaden the audience. And maybe it worked. I don't know. Maybe their streaming numbers are great.
Maybe.
And,
Well, and they're
because
probably reaching new people, Curtis. Like fuck us. Forget about
yeah,
us. They've already got us. We're going to watch it at least for curiosity's sake. But they're getting all these new people potentially. I mean, I don't know what's going on around the like conference table or whatever, but that's my assumption. Fuck them. We're going to get them
definitely.
anyway.
Right. And maybe that's part of the, a flaw in our thinking as being, older gentlemen, is that we feel that we're still relevant. And exactly, you said, are we? I don't think we are irrelevant anymore. I don't think we factor into the market at all when making marketing decisions about what's the best way to mass sell something. They're not thinking about me or you.
Right.
They want to hit, 15-year-old girls, which is basically what Prey's for. It's for
Right.
like a 15. That's who will love Prey, is like a 15-year-old girl who's played some video games and is like kind of a little bit sci-fi minded.
Right.
Like
She'll love
she's
that shit.
she's gonna love that shit.
Right.
And then I mean,
Well,
that's what I felt like Kenobi was too.
I haven't seen it, man. I haven't seen Kenobi.
It's the same thing. It's for like a 15-year-old girl.
Got it.
Which that's not a
Not a
who am I?
slight.
If that's your target market, that's your target market. I have no problems with that.
Right.
And maybe we're silly for thinking that we should be the target market. Like, Disney's going to market 13 to 15-year-old boys and girls with their properties because that's how you make lifelong fans, is hooking them right at that age.
For sure, like us, right?
Yeah, exactly, like us. And they want they want to get people used to those properties right around that age where your brain's starting to develop. You can understand higher concepts. your cognition's getting a little bit better, and
For sure.
these are the first properties they're seeing of different stuff like that. All right, so let's switch to a little bit of Kubrick. So Kubrick, I want to talk a little bit more about. I mean, his movie's been talked about to death, and if you
For
haven't
sure.
seen any Kubrick, go watch all of the Kubrick, all of it. It all still holds up.
For
It's
sure.
all still artistic masterpieces.
The
He
classic.
he does fall into that. Or did all right. So he does do both.
Yeah.
Sets the bar and is an
And
artist,
fair.
true
Absolutely fair.
artist.
Absolutely fair. What did we get from him? We got the well, I know that like Barry Lyndon was photographed uniquely. You know, the whole
Uh,
candlelit stuff that was unique. But I know that the Steadicam, something we use still, it was invented because of the
Steadicams.
Shining.
Yep. Steadicams. We got camera on a tripod shots
Right.
throughout a whole sequence that like really sit you in the scene. We got visual effects really early that were mind blowing. Have you ever seen it became like a meme, but of the kid flipping out on acid in the theater and running out screaming, watching Space Odyssey?
I did.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, I did.
Uh, so we got visual effects. We got uh, that creepy dark vibe, and so
Yeah,
that's kind of where I was going. I like to talk a little bit more about the man almost than his art.
for
So
sure.
some interesting things about him. He was known. Let's get into a little bit of conspiracy around Kubrick. So
Oh,
he
I
was
love it.
known to be the artist of the elite. So of
Oh,
all the most rich and powerful people in the world, he was the cameraman at their parties. So he was invited to all these mega events of billionaires, and like he was in the inside circle of the elite.
okay.
And also, he has a consistent theme throughout his movie of symbology and of storytelling that lines up with a bunch of weird MK Ultra storytelling.
MK
As far
Ultra.
as like human trafficking and abuse, and there's
Oh,
some really great breakdowns that exist
oh
online,
yeah.
and that kind of really show the parallels and the symbology of Freemasonry symbology. There's certain shots in a lot of his movies that are Freemasonry paintings,
Oh,
ritualistic paintings, where you can take a shot from 2001: Space Odyssey and put it right over the Freemason painting, and it
huh.
is a Freemason painting.
Incredible. Oh
So there's
wow.
a lot of that. And then, all right, so then add to even more to the conspiracy. There's an interview of him saying that he faked the moon landing on his deathbed. You can watch the interview online. Look
You
up.
have to share that with me because I know there's a big thing where he's the one that was supposedly responsible for creating the footage that we now know as Americans
Yep.
touching down on the moon.
Yeah, so you can still watch it online. Look up Kubrick admits to faking the moon landing, and it's right before he died, and he's talking to somebody else, and he's just basically he talks through the whole thing. He said, we faked it. We shot it in like Arizona or something, and
Well, so
uh,
everybody understands, like he died suddenly. It's not like he was on a deathbed for several weeks or anything. He died a few days before a premiere or after a premiere or something
right
like that.
before Eyes Wide Shut. And what was
Right.
Eyes Wide Shut, right? This was a
Uh,
movie also
about
exposing
the
weird elite
behavior.
things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Masquerade parties,
Clandestine
orgies,
activities. Yeah. Money,
you know, money,
secrecy, yeah, all that. Threats. Let's see, what is that? Threats of violence. Yeah, absolutely.
and
Yes.
threats
Yes.
of
Yes.
violence. And then he died. So, I mean, and what a, sad that he died, of course,
For
but what a
sure.
perfect ending to
Yeah,
such an enigma of a character
for
that
sure.
he dies his death is an enigma to totally come full circle of an enigmatic career,
Yeah.
and one of the true greatest artists of our time.
Well, and I think
Uh,
it's his greatest work. It's hard to choose a favorite of Kubrick, but I thought that Eyes Wide Shut was the best well done to me. And again, back to a Tom Cruise,
I don't know,
great,
the
great
Shining
performance.
though. Uh,
I know. It's most difficult for me to choose a favorite for me, and I know this is unsung for a lot of people, but to me, it was Barry Lyndon, like that. I mean,
really, really
it's
great
so
too.
well done, dude. So well done.
The Shining to me feels the most Kubricky.
It is the most
Uh,
Kubrick. You're right.
Yeah, that one is the most Kubricky. Like, if you're gonna only watch one of his movies and get the vibe of Kubrick, I would watch The Shining.
Emphatically
Uh,
agree.
but 2001 is such a the feeling from watching 2001 Space Odyssey is you're so satisfied with it at the end of the movie. You're like, you smile from inside out when it ends.
Right. Right.
You're like, that was so cool and
Yeah.
so good and so like when you hit that last ending scene of all the visuals and everything
Yeah.
and all the weird stuff is coming in, all the weird symbology and all that, and it wraps up in such a cool way, and you leave it feeling so satisfied with a movie that
I agree.
very few movies leave you satisfied at the end of it,
I
where
agree.
you're like, okay, like we're done,
I agree.
but Fiend. uh, and yeah, Barry Lyndon was really good though. There's a lot of great. I mean, if you go to the older stuff, which I'm not as versed in, like
No,
Spartacus,
nor I
and
really.
I'm sure the people that are from that era that watch those movies would say a lot of those are all-time classics in their mind too,
For sure.
because again, he just understood it. He got it.
Got it. Well,
Um,
he was apparently a real genius. Like I mean, a legitimate, high IQ, sort of, really potentially autistic, just genius type shit.
yep.
Full Metal Jacket was a great one
Oh,
as
well,
well.
that's
Like how do you discount that? Again, choosing a favorite one of those is one of the most challenging things that I'd have to. But I
that's an
think
impossible task.
yeah,
They're each a 10. You
for
can't
sure,
decide between all 10s. Like
for
Full Metal,
sure.
I forgot about Full Metal Jacket. That's one of the all-time greatest.
Well, and
Greatest, yeah, Clockwork Orange. What
oh
about
my
Clockwork
God, forgot
Orange?
about Clockwork Orange. Oh my God, like
Singing in the rain.
Jesus, and what a comment on Reformation,
Yep.
right? Like because that's what it is, right? Like it's like I think it's going after the whole idea that miscreant behavior can be corrected, and I don't know. I mean, like,
Well, it's
dude,
all that MK Ultra stuff too, the programming using psychedelics. That's what I
huh?
mean. There's all these parallels
MK
within.
Ultra, you have to share that. I mean, like that sounds familiar. I don't mean to step away from the podcast.
So no, we can talk about MK Ultra. So what MK Ultra actually is
Oh, got it.
there was a period after World War II where we absorbed 30,000 Nazi scientists and
Oh,
engineers from Germany. It was called Operation Paperclip. And the reason was the Soviets were taking all of them in as fast as they could. And we were like, oh shit, we can't let Russia steal all the greatest minds of Germany. And a lot of these guys were really bad actors,
right. Bad
like
dudes, man. Bad hombres.
yeah, like um, the head of NASA was oh geez, what's his name? It's Werner von Braun. Werner von
Oh, right.
Braun became the chief rocket scientist for NASA and basically the head of NASA. Werner von Braun also hung the slowest Jew from the walk-in of his rocket factory in Nazi Germany to let everyone know that they better work a little faster.
Holy cow,
Um,
dude. Yeah,
so and then
monster.
he became, a there's an old joke that like, what do you get when a a pedophile, a murderer, and a psychopath walk into a bar? What company do they start? NASA. Like there was all this. We absorbed all these people from Nazi Germany, and
Yeah, the intellectual property, for lack of a better word, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
these guys are
basically
brain.
yeah,
They're
and you know, clean slate and whatever. There was a lot of them moved into Argentina, as we know now.
oh
There's still
yeah,
huge villages in Argentina which are all German and no one speaks Spanish.
but yeah, a bunch
Uh,
of white dudes speaking German. Yeah,
yeah, there's just entire
um,
German Bavarian villages in
yeah.
Argentina to this day.
I think they
Like,
found someone recently there. Like, wasn't there a discovery of one of the Nazis there? I think I
there,
remember seeing the
there's a
headline
lot.
at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot down there. There's an ex Navy SEAL that went on a hunt to see if Hitler escaped there, and Tim Kennedy's his name. He's been on Rogan before, but
Huh.
he came away from it, said definitely, yeah, he got out to
What? Are you
Argentina.
serious?
Yeah, that's what he's like. All said and done, if I had to put money on it, I'm saying Hitler got out and he got into Argentina.
Wow.
And there's a whole there, there's hours of discussion on what actually happened after World War II in Argentina. They actually tried to start another Reich down there and tortured thousands of people, and all this crazy shit went on that is really just washed by the history books. But anyways, so Operation Paperclip, we absorbed all these Nazi scientists and engineers from Germany, and a lot of them dealt with, and this is all conspiracy, by the way,
Sure.
and
You're not going to
so
find a Wikipedia entry. Actually, you might find a Wikipedia entry, but
there,
you're not
yeah,
going to
there's
find a
not going to
gut.
be a valid Wikipedia entry on this. So the rumor goes is that a bunch of them started psychological experiments on like suburban housewives, setting up counseling centers in these weird like middle America suburban areas where a depressed housewife would go in for some counseling, and they would basically, play with her. They would try out different experiments on her, and this is about the same time LSD was coming out. So there was documented experiments of people being just loaded with LSD and then being shown all sorts of imagery a la Clockwork Orange style
Ah,
and reprogrammed in certain type of ways. And they actually say this is what happened to Charles Manson. There's a researcher about Manson that said he was an MK Ultra victim that was programmed through heavy acid experiments and experimented on, then was given acid to distribute out into the population. And every time he got arrested, he would just get immediately released. No court, no anything. So he was like some sort of weird plant from these experiments to push acid out onto the population. And so some of the weirdest, most violent murders start popping up around this time too, where there
right.
was a Marine that ran through these experiments too, and he just murdered some lady in the woods and like had no memory of it. He was like, I don't know what happened. I blacked out and like,
Sure.
and so and then also the Unabomber was apparently Ted Kaczynski was apparently part of these experiments as well.
No
So
way.
that yeah, and I'm doing like a real wide berth glossing over because this
Sure.
is some like deep nerd conspiracy research that goes into this. But basically,
Excuse me.
acid started getting experimented on. They started using acid as a tool to try and reprogram people. But what actually came out of it was a lot of undesirable results, like a lot of wild murders, a lot of split personality disorders, and things like that. So that's what, and that's why a lot of people draw parallels between like Clockwork Orange and, they're drugging him in there and then making him watch all
Yeah.
this imagery, trying to
Yeah.
reprogram him.
Rethink.
And
Yeah.
it's very MK Ultra ish if you know
Oh,
about the
that's
MK Ultra
interesting.
background.
So it may have less to do with the penal system than it does to do with MK Ultra and some higher brow, some higher ideas than just
secrecy.
Yeah.
Yep, the occult, secrecy, Freemasonry. Like these are all the kind of underlying themes of
Yeah.
Kubrick that are bumbling just under the surface.
Right. Well, you often see the apex with the eye. I mean, you at least see the single point perspective. I'm sure you've run into a lot of the same material that I have. Kubrick's been covered a lot, like you said. But that single point perspective, and again, we're talking about somebody who uses the same tricks over and over again, but it is so effective. I mean,
It
you and
works.
I, what you and I do daily is come up with a cooler shot. Like let's find a better angle, but do that right down the barrel of a hallway, and it's super effective, super suspenseful, and
They tell you, and you're told not to do that now, right?
right,
Like
right,
don't center it up, don't go right down the barrel.
right.
But you can if it's a creative choice, and it needs to be for a purpose, like The Shining with the twins in the hallway, and then pulling off a rack focus and being like, that I think that's a rack, right? That's
A
a rack
zoom,
on
a zoom,
a
right?
rack zoom, yeah,
Yeah,
or not focus, yeah, rack zoom, and
yeah,
then that same rack zoom is Spielberg popularized with Jaws, right?
right.
That's the most famous iteration of it. Is when dude's on the beach and he's like, shark, and then it turns to
Yeah,
some space in his name, and
yeah.
that's like probably the most iconic use of a rack zoom.
Rod Snyder,
Uh,
yeah. That's
and
bad.
so we got Kubrick. Cameron, and then you had another name. We talked about Aronofsky. You had another name on that list too that I'm spacing.
Well, you mentioned David Fincher. Do you know what that dude's up to? Have you seen the Love, Death, Robots?
Yeah, or no, I haven't watched Love, Death, and Robots yet. He's working on that.
Any of them? You haven't seen season 1 or 2?
I watched a couple of the episodes from season 1, but I haven't got through the whole thing. Which I should. That's one that's inexcusable. I haven't watched all those.
Well, isn't that your crowd too? Didn't you spend time at Blizzard? Am I mistaken?
Blur, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Blur. Yeah, you spent time over there. Anyway,
yeah, I did.
If I understand it right, Blur's doing all the work, and so anyway, in the most recent season,
it's Tim Miller's property.
Yeah. So David Fincher directed the second episode of the second season, or the second episode. If I understand it right, they line it up differently depending on the user. I don't know how that works, but anyway, there's a Fincher episode in there, and it's the best one. I mean,
of course,
a guy who doesn't make mistakes, man. Who doesn't?
Of course. And also those subtle things. He has so many subtle things going on, and there's probably so many that we miss.
Yeah.
That he has planned out in his mind that are forcing you, that are prompting you to take in his scenes in a certain kind of way. He's slowly manipulating you through the course of his movie to feel exactly how he wants you to feel.
Yeah.
And he does it in such an understated way that it becomes powerful at the end of the day.
So
like Seven is one of the, that's one of my favorites of his. That one's Fight Club too,
Yeah, Fight Club was great. The one about the love affair or the infidelity or Gone Girl, Ben Affleck and man, that have you seen it?
I did, and I loved it, but there was a moment where it all fell apart for me toward the end.
Which one?
When the trial, I guess. I mean, I don't remember exactly what happened. I saw that movie right when it came out so long ago, but it was like I was in, and then there was a moment during the trial where it like all fell apart for me, and I was like, why did it happen like that?
Gotcha. Well, it happened.
But I can't remember exactly what it was.
I'm willing to admit that Avatar wasn't as good as I think it was. You know what I mean? So it's also quite possible that Gone Girl wasn't as good as I think it was. But maybe it was
a great movie.
Anyway, he to me is someone that I idolize. Like I look forward to his work. What's he doing next? And we talked about Tarantino, or at least I mentioned Tarantino, and mostly Tarantino. Like it gets a little.
Pulp Fiction defines the 90s, really.
Totally.
It capped off the 90s. Like that was the perfect way to cap off the 90s of film. Is with Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is one of those that's so for me there's two movies of Tarantino's that, well, one's not all the way his, but True Romance is one of, I think, the all-time great movies ever. Ever. It's like, and Tarantino, I'm pretty sure wrote most of that. But I think is directed by somebody else. But like, if you haven't seen True Romance, that's a must-watch for everyone. Like,
I agree.
Everyone should watch True Romance, and everyone should like True Romance. If you don't like it, you should ask yourself why.
Yeah.
There might be something a little weird with you if you don't like True Romance. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, seek some psychiatric help, man. That was such a good movie. So well written, and everybody's great. Gary Oldman is an unsung. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he is an unsung because a lot of people love Gary Oldman, but
I love Gary Oldman.
I was loving that dude then. You know what I'm saying, my brother, or whatever he was. I can't remember what he said in the movie, but like that character was ridiculous, and he was so good at it.
Yeah, Gary Oldman's cool in that. I mean, Gary Oldman shows up in all your favorite movies, right? Like, and when he does show up, he always pulls it off perfectly. Like, you're like, oh, Gary Oldman, and then he's awesome. Fifth Element.
Yeah,
he's one of the greatest bad guys ever in Fifth Element.
Oh, so good.
The speech about all the little things that come out and make life possible when he knocks the glass and then chokes on the cherry. That's an epic scene.
Oh, there was the Fifth Element. Who are we talking about? Fifth Element and the Leon, the professional. Both of them have Gary Oldman in it, and he's fantastic in both. Right?
Yep. Gary Oldman's actually in one of my other all-time favorite, lesser-known movies. It's a movie called Romeo is Bleeding, it's it's this kind of really dark, sad. I like dark, sad. I like melancholy movies. I like sad movies. But I like it when it's the whole thing is just this arc of melancholy and sadness.
Ah,
It's like
gotcha.
that's what I really vibe with, and it's a mystery. I would say it's a kind of a mystery movie, but it's like a dirty, disgruntled New York cop, and it has this almost kind of noir feel a little bit to it. Um, but it's got like a jazz soundtrack to it.
Oh,
So it's this very kind of like old New York, kind of sad and jazz. It's like sad jazz and the lone broken man walking alone on the New York street at night kind of feel to it.
yeah.
And it's just such a cool movie. Like I don't want to
Awesome.
spoil not one little bit of it for anybody, but
All
if
right, great.
you're if you're into, I don't even know who to recommend that one into because it's a
Oh,
great movie. I love Romeo's Bleeding. That's one of
all
my
righty,
faves
dude.
of Gary Oldman.
I'll
It's
have
one
to
of
check
Gary
that out.
Oldman's best, I think. Uh, and I'm trying to think of what else he pops up. He pops up all over the time, and he's always great in everything that he's in.
Yeah, I loved his Dracula. I loved his
Yeah, that's right.
Count
Him and
Vlad. Yeah.
Keanu.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's so unfortunate that casting, but I still love that movie. Speaking of Winona Ryder, that was enjoyable. That has been enjoyable to me. That scene has been in my mind ever since. You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about,
I do. I
right?
do.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I loved it. It was gothic, you know.
Yeah.
Speaking of gothic, I watched Interview with a Vampire recently. That was
Oh,
good.
it is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm a Brad Pitt fan too.
To
I
some
like
extent.
almost everything that Brad Pitt's in. Also, shout out True Romance. Brad Pitt's one of Brad Pitt's earliest roles.
Absolutely right. That's right.
He's the stoner on the couch with the honey bear, and he's smoking up. And the best is, I always remember that when somebody gives me shitty directions now, because remember when he gives the directions in it, he's like, "You're gonna go, and you're gonna go, and then you're gonna make a left, and then you're gonna like make another left, man."
Yes.
When the mobster guys are trying to get directions from him.
Yeah. Total Brad Pitt fan. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate his new one. You know, the Bullet Train apparently isn't that good, but
Oh, I haven't
uh,
seen it yet, and it's not his best work.
apparently not, man. Apparently, like they tried to sell it on Star Power, and it's just not that good, you know. But I haven't seen it. I can't speak for it, but I am definitely a Brad Pitt fan. I think he's great.
Yeah.
Uh,
Too many big actors is always hard to pull off, right?
for sure.
If you're gonna do an ensemble cast, I feel like there still needs to be someone that holds it together as the main star. Like again, Wes Anderson is great at that, right?
Absolutely. It's
Where
star-studded, but there's one guy, right?
yeah, there's one that matters. Like Bill Murray is an amazing one to center things around.
Fucking A.
And or he picks always his main choice of acting of actor to pull it all together,
Right.
because there's that problem of wanting to give everyone enough screen time and
For
give
sure.
everyone enough speaking lines, and that's a very difficult thing to try and manage and pull off for anyone.
Definitely. And you're pulling
uh
great actors, like you don't want to snub
yeah,
Angelica Houston, you
yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah, you don't want to snub Angelica or God, and that's such a Steve Zissou in The Life Aquatic is what we're making
Man,
reference to there.
yeah,
And that's one of the most incredible movies ever too, that's not seen by enough people.
I agree.
And again, a piece of art on its own.
For sure.
And
It has a feel. It has
yeah,
it's its own little universe. And you're not going to get that in a PG-13 thing. I don't know even know if it was
no,
was PG-13, but it was
the interns don't get nines.
that was special.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and that's such a good one too. It's just yeah, so I mean Fincher, yeah, so Fincher's another one where you can just kind of like, I like those. It's like in music where every album's good and every song on every album's good with a lot of these guys. Like you can just go and watch all the Fincher stuff, and
there's something
it,
great in there, dude.
there's
It
something
might-
great in every single one of them.
yeah. It
You're
might
gonna
not be his best work, like this might not be his best piece, but there's something really great in there that you're going to get away from it. Yeah.
oh yeah, it's all special. So
Agreed.
yeah, so let's talk about some of the recent. You brought up The Wire too.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness, man.
have you finished all of it?
I only found it like recently. It was yeah, I finished it. Now, it was probably a year ago when we found it, and I reluctantly came to it. People kept telling me, "Man, you got to watch The Wire. You got to watch The
It
Wire. You got to
starts
watch The
so
Wire."
slow.
And it took a while, but man, once the
Yeah,
hook was set, like that's some of the best television that I have ever seen.
it's so
It's
good.
so good.
You
I
can
was
so FYI, you can watch The Wire as many times as you want, and it's good every single time.
every
That's
time.
It's one of those rare ones like you can rewatch all of it, and it's the same exact feeling where you're like, "This is so good."
It's
And
still good.
and Dominic, what's his face?
Oh,
I
what
always
is his
forget his
name?
name. McNulty, but
Yeah, McNutty. That's right. That guy.
he's great. He's not even American. He's got a thick British accent.
Right.
And he totally pulls off the that Maryland accent. And it's just, and I was thinking about that. It's so hard to put your finger on. Like, first of all, it's so hard to remember any of the characters' names besides
Right.
McNulty.
Right. McNutty,
Like,
we got him.
can you name any other character besides McNulty?
Omar was the
Omar,
he
right?
was the stick up boy, right? Like, and Omar bites it in the end, and
Yeah,
like
the
by
the
this point,
tree stands alone.
right. I'm rooting for Omar, and fuck, Omar's dead. But we're
Yeah.
literally talking about a stick up boy, dude. He sticks up drug dealers and sells drugs again, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But I looked it up, and it's one of those very exceptional things where they built a curriculum around it because it was so accurate and accurate in that like the whole process from the crime scene, in the projects, inner city projects, right, to the police who patrol it, to the prosecutors who prosecute it, to the mayor who has to deal with the problem. And the thing is, like, one of the most interesting things that I took away from it, the two guys who created it, I can't remember their names now, but one of them was a former cop there in Baltimore,
And the
and
other was a politician, I think.
something like that. Yeah, and
Yeah.
their goal when writing it was to not make something like CSI or Law and Order SVU, where all of the people involved, or at least the heroes, their motivations are for the good. They want to solve this problem and keep this little girl from getting molested again, or something like that. And all those are great ambitions, but that's not the real world, man. The real world is you got fucking quotas you need to meet. You haven't made enough arrests, or crime is out of control, and my poll numbers are shitty. So this stuff starts at the top of the city and goes all the way down to these guys that are being picked up. They know they're down there selling crack, but they don't crack down on it because maybe it's bad for numbers at the top. Anyway, all that to say, like, the motivations for the characters in that were so well grounded in reality. That's what I think set that show apart from every other cop drama that we may have ever seen, to me.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like a movie that's not as supposed. It's not that should have. The muddle in my words here. That a movie that should never have been allowed to be made.
Agreed.
Because almost every other cop drama or crime drama has a bit of propaganda in it, where it's trying to make heroes out of all the police or FBI agents or whatever. Anything you're going to watch on mainstream TV, like a CBS show or whatever, it's going to make an absolute hero out of the cop character, where he's good looking and funny and witty, and he cares about justice above all else. So much so that he will break every law, destroy the Constitution, as long as justice is done.
Justice prevails, baby.
Yes, and that's the general just archetype that's pushed forward in almost all cop and crime dramas. So when it's got that real feel to it, it feels so nice,
Absolutely.
Because you don't smell bullshit finally.
Totally.
And as soon as you get in, you're like, oh, this is cool. Like they're not trying to make me think a certain way about something. They're trying to teach rather than entertain, and it's entertaining along the way, which
Absolutely.
There are very few things made like that.
No, that one was special to me. It stood out.
Right. And I don't think he'd really gone on to do much else after that even comes close. That might be just one of those special instances where all the right things came together. They found the money somehow. And
Yeah,
then
stars aligned, everything lined up just right. We got this great thing because, and I'm sorry to step on you, Curtis, but all this came with a new subscription to HBO, and it goes without saying that Sopranos is an HBO product that everybody hails, but man, it's not as good. And I think because The Sopranos was such a good show at the time, nothing like it was done. And The Wire is something that's going to stand or endure, be around for a good bit longer because um, it wasn't wed to the shock factor that The Sopranos was. Oh my God, we saw somebody killed on screen. Can you believe that?
yeah, totally. The phone shut off there for a sec. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, gotcha, buddy. Check.
Sweet. Yeah, bummer. I'm about to buy a new mic here, but I guess it was about time. This one's 4 or 5 years old.
I love it how yours is giving you guff and it's like, some high end shit. And I got I think my stuff is coming through the
Coming through the
camera
webcam.
thing.
I mean, I have one on my webcam too. We're just trying to get the best quality possible.
Oh, I'm sure you sound a lot better than I do. Yeah, you and Mars have serious mics, man.
So and I talked to Mars a little bit about trying to come on, but he was going a different direction with the stuff that he was working with than I thought he was.
So you gotcha.
So The Wire and then Stranger Things we talked about.
Man.
And Breaking Bad you had on the list. So Breaking Bad's, if everyone likes Breaking Bad, who doesn't like Breaking Bad?
Who doesn't?
If you don't like Breaking Bad, that's another one where really? You don't like Breaking Bad?
What don't you like, really? Yeah. That's the question. Yeah.
Well, and that's one that is quietly also spawned copycats off of it. So template of that drama template where there's a main character and his life is terrible and he has nowhere to turn. No matter what direction he looks, no matter who he runs to, it's just a problem.
Gotcha,
There's problems with the wife. There's problems at work. There's problems with his partners.
I'm dying. No matter,
problems with himself. I'm dying as well. So every single way you look, there's a problem, and there seems like there's no way out. And inevitably, the main character finds his way through, and that's what's fun to watch about it. Is how is he going to get out? It's all a catch-22, and then somehow he gets out of that catch-22. And then it's always going to lead to a larger issue. Like, oh, we killed the drug dealer that was bothering us, but now his boss is going to show up to investigate why his guy's dead.
Right.
So everything leads to a larger problem, and that pressure on the main character never lets up.
No, and builds. Yeah.
And builds to multiple crescendos.
Yeah. And so well done, dude. At least that one. I never saw the Better Call Saul. Did you follow up with?
I watched some of it. I should probably give it a full watch because I'm a fan of Odenkirk too.
Odenkirk, right?
Yeah, well, Bob Odenkirk's awesome.
I didn't know I liked Vince Gilligan until I saw Breaking Bad, and I think I do. Breaking Bad was so good, and at least from what I understand, Better Call Saul was great TV as well. I mean, obviously it's not the same. We don't have Cranston and Pinkman and a lot of other characters, but Bob Odenkirk does he can carry a show. I watched a few episodes, and he was able to.
He's a great lead.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of other shows now in this format, and all of them are good using that same format. And I don't know whether I think it's just that format works. Like there's a show Animal Kingdom about this family that they all are. It's like a heist family. Same exact kind of format where that one has more parallel stories. It's all the brothers, and so each brother kind of has his own little storyline.
Right.
But it's essentially that pressure from all sides coming in. And then more recently, Yellowstone is that format.
Oh.
And Yellowstone's amazing because of that, where instead of Cranston, it's Kevin Costner.
Gotcha.
Navigating all these problems. And then from that same producer, there's another show, The Mayor of Kingstown, which is Jeremy Renner.
Oh, yeah.
And an exact same template as well, where Jeremy Renner, all this pressure coming from all sides, no matter where he turns, and you get to see how Jeremy Renner navigates through it.
Gotcha.
And it's just a satisfying formula for a series. Like, it's a great formula to plug stuff into, and
For
it just
sure.
seems to work every time. I haven't seen it done badly yet.
Gotcha, man. Very cool. Very cool.
Um,
Well, I'm curious what Vince does next, man, because apparently he's done with
yeah.
the Breaking Bad universe. I haven't seen that one. Animal Kingdom, is that what you said? Animal Kingdom?
Animal Kingdom,
And it's
yeah,
good, huh?
they're in their final season right now,
Oh,
and that we said it usually peaks third or fourth season. Funny enough, the actors were much newer in Animal Kingdom,
uh,
so they're finally hitting their groove about season 5 and 6, and now the show's ending.
got it. Damn
But
it.
but it's about ready to end.
Okay.
It's about time for it. So it's okay. But you can tell it's like finally in the 6th season, you're like, oh, you all understand your roles, and you all understand your characters finally, and it's really popping right now. But that's a really fun one. And then what's Jesse's name from Breaking Bad?
Aaron Paul. That's the actor,
Aaron
right?
Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually met Aaron Paul one time at a party. He's a quirky guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, he does awesome stuff too. Like, yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't remember me.
Uh,
uh, it, he does a bunch of interesting stuff because he produces a lot of his own stuff. So
oh, I
he's a
see.
really smart dude, and he is running. He has a great show. I think it's on Hulu, and it's about a cult. Oh, you would really like this show.
Sounds interesting.
Damn, I'm spacing the name of it. Um, it's about a cult, and it's kind of feels Scientology-ish, and he's one of the main the main players in this cult, and then he gets out of it. What is it? The Path, yes. So
Oh,
it's called The Path, and this is one of his productions with Moynihan. I co-produced it with him.
no
And
kidding.
Moynihan's cool too.
Huh.
Um, and so it's like a cult, but what if what the cult was preaching was real?
Hmm.
And so you're kind of deciding the whole time you're watching, like, is it real? Like, is
Huh.
he the chosen one? Like,
Interesting.
so
The
it's like,
path.
yeah, and it's really cool. I definitely give it. I don't know if they're keep making episodes. I stopped watching at a point, but it was another one of those that's just it was interesting every time and had its own kind of unique feel to it, where it felt like its own thing, and it was really cool show.
Gotcha.
Um, and then I'm liking him. So to get into Westworld a little bit, Westworld, I was so hype after the first season. I was like, this is going to be a show that changes everything. That was one of the most amazing seasons I've ever seen in a sci-fi universe. And then season 2 was the worst thing I've ever seen.
Unfortunate. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Oh my god, I don't know what happened. I don't know if everything producing and writing and everything just fell apart and they changed everyone over.
Switch
But
teams or something.
what was so interesting and unique about the first season, they just took it, smashed everything off of the table, and just turned it into this horrible shit pile. Like,
Unbelievable.
I don't even know how else to say it, where
Thanks, Scott.
everything became the most lazy, cliche versions of the story they were trying to tell. Like, instead of this weird mystery that was so like that would just get your wheels turning and make you think about it, like, is he a robot? Is she a robot? Are they all robots? It turned into this whole like robot mad that human made it, robot now kill human, and and that was what they turned it into, and it was like, oh my god, what did you just do?
Well, hold on.
Why
We're on
would
season 3 now, though, right? Or this
so
one?
they're into 4, I think, but I
Oh,
just
yeah.
started watching season 3 with Aaron Paul,
Oh, got it. I see what
and
you're
it's
up to.
much better. It's so far I'm liking what I see. I had walked away after season 2. I was like, oh, never again. But then I've been kind of out of stuff to watch, and so I was like, all right, let me. I saw that the new Westworld was coming. I was like, all right, let me see what they kind of did with season 3. I went in with very low expectations.
Got you.
He's maybe not he's a little weird casting for the character. Like, the character's supposed to be this ex-military guy, and he's not a very big stature guy. You know what I mean? So it
Right.
seems a little weird where you're like, but I know a lot of dudes in the military who aren't big stature guys,
For
so
sure. Yep.
it totally works. And he's great in the role. And so far, I'm interested in the story. It seems like whatever madness happened with season 2, they're kind of riding that ship so far in season 3.
Pass all that. Hopefully, right?
Yeah, I would just go directly from.
1 to 3.
You could almost skip season 2 outright, and there'd be some confusing elements where you're like, well, what happened? How did she get from here to there? But I don't even think it would matter. It'd be better just left. Yeah, it would be better just to have the mystery in your mind. Like, what happened? How did she get from here to here? And because you don't want to know that story of how she got from A to B.
Gotcha. Not worth it. Not worth it, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's really good in that. He's really good in everything that I've seen him in recently. I guess is the point. That's the point I'm making. Is I'm always for whatever reason, which is totally unjustified, a little bit suspect of Aaron Paul for some reason.
Oh.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the way he looks.
Was it Jesse Pinkman?
Yeah, maybe because Jesse's so sus in it that I'm a little bit sus on him. Like, is he gonna do a good acting job in this, or is he just gonna be Jesse?
Right.
And the answer is he does great. Like, yeah, every time I've came in with doubt when I've watched it, I'm like, oh, that was great. Like, such a good job.
I want for him to do well, man. I mean, like, Bryan Cranston got most of the credit for that show, but I think there's a lot of credit that needs to be tossed around, dude. Jesse Pinkman did a great job.
Cranston, it was the accumulation of his whole career. I mean, I guess you could, if you really want to, the Malcolm in the Middle fans out there are going to be like, oh, that's his whole body of work is Malcolm in the Middle. But, Breaking Bad was, that's his peak, right? He's old enough now where he'll never achieve a higher peak than Breaking Bad.
I don't know where he goes from there, yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, but everybody was great in that show. Like was it Uncle Jesse or Uncle whatever his name was? Uncle Bill, whatever. The dude that played him, he was absolutely exceptional, man. He was unforgiving and ruthless and all that. And Gus, the bad guy, was fantastic. Anyway, and to the point, I hope that Aaron Paul does really well.
Yeah, the bad guy, drug dealer guy, is actually the bad guy in the last Far Cry game. Far Cry 5, I think. I think it's Far Cry 5. He's the bad guy in it.
Gotcha.
And he's a really good villain because he's that great soft-spoken villain, right?
Yes, Uncle Jack. Right.
Yeah.
Curtis, I'm cheating, but yeah, that dude was fantastic, and on. And Jesse was great too. So I hope that it wasn't just the Bryan Cranston show, and everybody else does well too. I'm glad to hear that he's doing really well. Good for him.
Yep. And then what was the last series on that list of the recent stuff?
Oh, the Squid Game, man! If you haven't seen it yet.
Oh no, I've seen Squid Game. Yep.
Well, would you agree? I mean, like, dude, that was great.
Squid Game is awesome.
Man,
go ahead.
Sorry, I drove into Hollywood to meet some of the DD crowd that we're working with for something, and like every billboard, it was Squid Game, and beneath it were these little captions like most Emmy-nominated show of the year or something like that. I was like, so I came home and I told Emily. I said, Emily, we have to watch the show, and we did, and man, it was great.
You watched it subbed or dubbed?
Well, good question. So we watched it dubbed, and you? It was a mistake, wasn't it? It was a mistake. I knew it.
It's always this mistake. This is what we talked about in the last episode with Adam. Is always sub, never dub. Never dub. There's a problem with. There's just a problem. You don't need the dub. You don't need the dub. Just read the words, hear it in Korean. It's everything's better.
So we should have.
All right, tell me if you agree with this. So. What I thought I had the movie sussed out at a point.
Oh yeah.
And I got all excited because I wanted it to go a certain way, and I thought that was the way it was going. And then when it didn't go that way, pissed me off. What I thought was gonna happen. I'm gonna spoil the shit out of this, kinda. Yeah. But if you haven't seen Squid Game, you've had plenty of time to see Squid Game. You should have watched it.
Yeah, time's up.
So when the old man's in the hospital bed, right?
Yeah.
And he summons him after he's been out and he's all lost in his life and he's depressed and he can't find meaning with his life anymore after Squid Game. And he meets the guy in his hospital room. I thought 100% what was going to happen is that guy was going to give him Squid Game. and
Ah,
he was going to
same.
become the new
Old man.
the new old man.
Yeah,
And
the
that's
host.
what I wanted to happen,
Yeah,
is that through Squid Game breaking him, he would, because that's kind of how it all felt to me, is like your life doesn't have any purpose. You are just adrift in the world with no direction.
yeah.
And now the Game old man was going to give him Squid Game,
And
and he
perfect.
was going to now have purpose, and he was going to reluctantly decide to take it, but then become the old man.
Totally.
And then
Totally.
when it didn't, I was like, ah.
Same, brother. Same. Well, even further, Curtis, like what's most confusing to me is that there'll be a second season.
Oh,
And
what?
wait, how do you do a second season? I mean, like if it had been done the way that you mentioned there, you could almost see it. We could see it from the other side, right? Like
It's going to be
because
bad.
I'm afraid.
My money's on it's not going to be good.
I'm afraid too, dude. I think it was a fluke. They should have left it this one season, left it alone, and like you
Yes,
ended it that way.
it was complete. What they are doing, they're going to do a live action show.
Oh, okay.
They're going to do a real life Squid Game.
Okay.
And I think with I think the same amount of contestants, like 100,000 contestants or something,
Yeesh.
and then whittle it down. I think Netflix is doing it, but it's going to be like a game show, like
That's
the
pretty
real
cool.
game show of it. So that could be really cool.
Could be.
That could be really cool. But as far as Squid Game 2 being, I'll reserve judgment. But
Same.
if I had to put money on it right now, I've got like 2-1 odds. It's gonna suck.
10% tops, dude. 10% is yeah. It might be good, and that's 10% chance.
Yeah, I'm putting. I'm not giving great odds that it's gonna be great.
And one more show I do want to mention to you, Curtis. I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen Barry? Have we talked about Barry yet?
Oh no, we'll talk about Barry and then we'll wrap this up. But yeah, Barry is amazing.
You've seen
Like,
it? Oh,
yeah. What a great show.
have you finished the season? The most recent one is season 3.
No, I haven't watched season 3, but I've watched seasons 1 and 2.
Man, to me, it all crystallized whenever I saw what Fuchs was and Kusanov was, right? So
Right.
in Star Wars, and this is all like it isn't unique to Star Wars, Curtis. You and I have talked about this, like the whole Peterson, Campbell, Young, Shadow, Hero, Dark Father in
Yeah.
Vader, and
Yeah.
Dark Father, Darth Vader, and then Light Father in Obi-Wan. And we got the same thing in Kusanov, who's encouraging him to follow your dreams, become this actor. You can transform. You can be different. You don't have to be violent or whatever it is. In the meantime, Fuchs is pulling him back. Man, I mean, this light father, dark father, and it's so crystal clear. And I wonder to myself, like when guys set out to write it and they are this crystal clear, if they're choosing to write a crystal clear light father and dark father, or if it just happens on paper. You know?
I think. What's the main character's real name?
Oh, Bill Hader. Yeah.
Bill Hader. Hader, I feel like, is a smart guy.
I think so too.
I feel like he's a thinker. I feel like he's an intelligent person, and I think he definitely understands archetypes. Whether he's has it in his head exactly like as you said, the light father, dark father, maybe. But
Maybe.
I think he definitely has. I think he's thought about it thoughtfully and definitely has the entire thing and all the characters set up in this complex way on purpose. I think he understands the complexity of every character he's writing and that he has made conscious choices to make them exactly as they are. 100%.
It's expertly done. To me, I think it's some of the best television writing that I've seen in a very, very long time. It was so refreshing. I mean, I don't know if you ever worked with Stuart at Proof, but he recommended that to me years ago, and I reluctantly came to it. But when I did, I mean, it just kind of blew my hair back. And particularly the arc with the girlfriend, Sally,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I hated Sally the first season. I mean, she was
I
detestable.
loved her.
She was detestable. Like she was a Hollywood actress. You know, she's
Right.
completely self-obsessed. I mean, she's written really well. I loved how well she was written, but I mean, you hate the
Yes.
character. Well, anyway, in the second season, if you've seen it, you know you have, right? You know how there's that arc where she has this ex-boyfriend that was physical with her and violent and all that stuff, and she wants to be honest, and she tries to be honest, and the movie machine grinds it up and turns it into what was Pam Anderson's action hero thing?
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire.
Yep.
they turned that, like, female empowerment becomes that. And I thought
Yeah.
it's so crystally well written, man. I mean, that's Hollywood, dude. It's Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that you didn't like her character so much. I dislike other characters way more than her. Where I totally vibed with her, where she reminded me of so many other people I know in real life.
Well, that's
That I
one
was,
of the things, yeah.
yeah, and I was like, I totally know a bunch of people just like her.
Curtis, you lived out here, dude. You know what it's like. H-Town is
Yeah,
full of
yeah,
people just like that, man. Yeah.
exactly, just like her. And so I guess I never felt, because I know exactly what you're saying. There's certain characters on certain shows that I just hate. That I
Yeah.
can't stand them, and that's a credit to them as an actor, because they're portraying that character so, because they're not like that in real life, right?
No.
But they're pulling off their character so well that you're like, oh, I hate you so much. And hers, though, I was amused by her. She didn't make me angry. It was like, oh, I totally know people like that. So every time she would do something that really fit that type of person, I was so like happy about it. Like, yep, there you go.
Yeah, she is.
Totally. And I thought she was, and again, what you're saying, like, is it all written with that much thought in mind? Because she's the perfect girlfriend for Barry, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like how his solution to all her problems is to murder. Whenever she starts having beef, he's like, where does that guy live? That's a solution for everything.
Well, anyway, check out the season, dude. It's definitely, man. I mean,
Yep.
I'm only halfway through it, but like it's pretty good, man. And apparently, because of the pandemic, it's been in hiatus for a while.
Yeah.
They've already written the 4th season, so it's like, it's already in the can, so to speak. So I think we'll see more of it.
Barry's a show that could go 10 seasons, no problem.
I hope.
I feel like Hater's never going to get anything better going on than that. I mean, it's his show. He wrote it. He owns it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of, what he's actually got on paper with the studio or whatever, but that's his baby.
For sure.
And what are you going to do? Go away from Barry and go take a role in a movie? I mean, he could make cameos and some other stuff, but why not just go out with Barry through the rest of your career?
Yeah, die a hero, bro, because that's
Yeah.
heroic work.
Yeah, and you're in something special too. So it's like, if you get to be quarterback, you play quarterback for as long as you can until they got to carry you off the field. And if you stumble into something like Barry, you be Barry for as long as they'll let you be Barry, because it's an amazing, amazing show.
Yeah, dude. Really enjoying that right now.
But yeah, that's about over 2 hours we just went there, dude. So I say we wrap it on up, and that was great talk.
Curtis, dude, it's always a joy hanging out with you, man. This is the easiest couple of hours I've had in a while, man. Thanks for swinging by.
Yeah, and then apologize to everybody for the technical difficulties that we have there. I'll be buying a new mic this week. Solve it. So that's what happened before. Was we had technical difficulties with the cameras before, so I bought a new camera, and now it's time to buy the new mic. But yeah, that was a great talk, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And I do have a gift for you. I'm going to get you a Sayonara Punk NFT and onboard you into the NFT world and show you how to get it in your wallet and everything. And we do that at the end of every episode. It's a cool little like timestamp for every episode that you have this little thing that's on the blockchain that says, I did this thing on this date.
Cameron was here.
Yeah, Cameron was here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it for this week, and we'll be doing the same thing next Sunday. And thank you for everyone that came by and watched. Smash that like button, subscribe if you want to. Every little bit helps. Share it if you can, because we're just getting started, and we're gonna keep doing these. So have a good night and a good week ahead of you, everybody.
Curtis, you too, buddy. Toodles.